Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new video. If you're new here, my name is Rachel and I make videos about all sorts of stuff. I do book reviews, I do kind of video responses to kind of social commentary sort of stuff. I make a lot of feminist videos, there's a lot of like pro-LGBTQ stuff in my videos. I just try and talk about things that I find interesting, but also try and make it educational for you guys. And today we're doing a little bit of it's a less serious video, it's a book review. So a few weeks ago I reviewed the Frieda McFadden book, The Teacher, and people actually really enjoyed that video, it was great. And ever since then people have been asking me to read and review one of her other books called Ward D, which is an ableist mess. Now of course there are going to be some serious topics kind of covered in this video because, you know, ableism is serious, it's not a good thing, I don't think I need to say that to you guys, but that is a serious thing, but at the same time I hope we can kind of keep this video a little bit light and laugh at the ridiculousness, because this book is poorly written, the plot is so damn stupid, and I kind of want to try and mix the levity of the ridiculousness of the book with like the seriousness of pointing out that actually, yeah, this is quite harmful to people. So hopefully we can do that today. I wanted to start by having a look at the summary that Amazon gives about the book and the plot, and we'll cover the plot bit in a second, but first, I found this really interesting on the Amazon listing, right? Instead of like, so you know, back in the day, you would buy a book and you would have a blurb on the back and it would be like, blah blah blah, this is the story of blah, 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 blah. I mean, not written like that, but you get the idea, that's the thing. Now apparently we have that and a list of tropes. Like, genuinely, this is used to sell the book. Tropes: claustrophobic thriller, psychological locked room, mystery thriller, suspense thriller, survive the night. And I just kind of want to start this video with the discussion of like, does anyone else find it odd how over the last few years we've had this sort of rise in seeing tropes in books in particular as being this like good marketable thing that people look for? So basically in this context, a trope is a storytelling concept or convention which is easily recognizable to the reader. They usually follow the same sort of patterns or share similar qualities to each other. So for example, if you have a story with a friends to lovers trope, there'll probably be different set dressing depending on what the story is and where it's set, but generally you'll have two friends who've known each other for a considerable amount of time, but they've never admitted their feelings for each other. Maybe one of them is aware but doesn't say anything, and the other seems to be kind of unaware of their own feelings, but it's quite obvious to the reader that they're meant to be together and there's romantic feelings there, and then usually some sort of conflict happens which kind of pulls them apart a little bit, or they stop being friends for a while. Usually one of these people has got into a relationship with someone else, and then that brings up a whole bunch of drama, and then by the end of the book they both either realize their feelings or express their feelings, and they get together and start dating each other. And no matter what book you read and what setting it is, or how old these characters are, or you know, what jobs they do or what hobbies they have, or whether it's like a contemporary romance or historical romance or a fantasy romance, as long as there's a friends to lovers trope, the story is generally very similar, you know? Because it's a trope, it generally follows these same conventions and hits these same plot points. Now, tropes can be really useful for writers to give them an idea of how to create a good, compelling story arc with a solid structure that they know works. However, typically creatives and audiences alike have still demanded originality. You know, if you stick too close to the classic trope outline without introducing any new elements or subverting any expectations or doing anything new, then you risk your writing becoming cliched and boring, and generally that's been seen as a pretty bad thing, right? I feel like for the longest time, at least when I was starting to get into kind of like media and literary criticism when I was younger and a teenager and into my 20s and stuff, I still remember film and book reviewers and stuff like that being like, oh, well, this book, film, TV series, other piece of media, it's unoriginal because they just use this trope and it's this and this and this. And it was more of a phrase used by reviewers when assessing a piece of media. And creators didn't really want to acknowledge that they were using or utilizing a trope unless they were explicitly saying we're subverting this, or we're taking this but doing something new with it. And they were using that as a selling point. However, I have noticed in recent years with the rise of BookTok in particular, there has been a big push for what I call trope marketing. Now, I don't know if this is an official term, but it's quite generic, so I'd be shocked if no one else has used it, but it's just what I call this. Where, in my mind, trope marketing is when publishers, authors, even other readers and reviewers use the inclusion of tropes in a piece of media as a selling point. They're like, you'll like this book because it utilizes this trope and this trope and this trope. You'll like this film because it utilizes this trope and this trope. And sometimes it's, you'll see authors doing those little like images on Instagram or TikTok or whatever of their book, being like, oh, this is friends to lovers, this is enemies to lovers, this is God, why can't I think of any other trope off the top of my head? This is this, and they'll put like little arrows and labels around their book listing the tropes. Or in this case, we have an Amazon listing that literally just lists off the tropes in the book. This is quite a new thing. This wasn't really done in the past, to the best of my knowledge, at least dating back to the 90s, This does seem like a fairly recent development. And it does make sense. Tropes become popular for a reason. They are tried and tested story arcs or character arcs or other conventions which work, which they know audiences like. There's something comforting and safe about going into a book knowing that it contains X, Y, and Z and will typically adhere to these conventions and have plot points 1, 2, 3, and you're likely going to like it before you go in because you've basically already read the story and liked it. This is just the same story in a new setting. So why wouldn't you like it? That's comforting, that's safe. However, I do worry that this comes with its own problems, Will we end up with authors and other creatives stop trying to be creative and push boundaries and be experimental with their work because they know that audiences don't necessarily, or the general audiences, the mass audiences, don't necessarily want something new anymore. They just want regurgitated tropes. They want comfort and safety. Will it stop people, and especially readers, from stepping outside their comfort zone and maybe reading a style or genre or theme of book that they wouldn't normally? Does it get people stuck in repetitive ruts? That's my big worry. A discussion that I touched on briefly in my last Frieda McFadden video was that her work has had a lot of plagiarism accusations because she has entire novels where the plot is lifted almost exactly from other famous novels. For example, she's got one that's basically just Misery repackaged. She's got another that's just Colleen Hoover's Verity repackaged. She's got another that's just like My Dark Vanessa repackaged, She's even been accused of lifting lines almost word for word from other books, which is more accurate to what plagiarism actually is. There's a lot of debate about whether you can plagiarize an entire plot because, how much is just copying or homage or being inspired by something and how much is plagiarism, Can you copyright a plot outline? Legally, no, but morally and ethically, maybe it's a bit more complicated. This all leads me to ask, how much is Freda copying a whole plot and plagiarizing from other authors, and how much is she just over-reliant on tropes and generic genre conventions? What's the difference between an homage or an adaptation and straight-up copying a story? That's really, really, really damn complicated and requires a lot more nuanced discussion than I have time to go into in this video. And it also leads to the question, is Freda simply copying other stories and relying so heavily on tropes, not because she lacks creativity herself, but simply it's because what her audience want? She's found this formula that works, and she's just giving the people what they're asking for. They want the familiarity and safety of knowing where a story is going to go before they even start. I might be like more inclined to defend her a little bit and say that this is the case if she was writing any other genre than thrillers. Thrillers, the audience want to be shocked, they want to be excited, they want it to be unexpected. And Freda is apparently known for her shocking twists in her books. So the whole safety and comfort argument kind of goes out the window a little bit there, doesn't it? In general, though, I feel very conflicted about this rise in trope marketing and trope-based creation, but I can completely see where it's come from. We live at the minute in this really damn messed up world where we're stuck in a cost of living crisis, where people are living paycheck to paycheck and even then struggling to get by. Our politicians are corrupt and cruel and often criminals. Donald Trump. I know I'm English, but I still really, really hate him. We don't know what rights are going to be taken away from us at any moment, or if our best friends are going to be deported out of the country, or denied healthcare, or prosecuted for simply existing in this world. Of course, living in a world like this, people want to turn to media which offers comforts and safety and predictability. And who can argue against that? Similarly, people have so much less free time now because so many of us are working every hour of the day that we can just to pay our rents and buy food and survive and scrape by. So, in our limited free time, of course we don't want to waste it. We turn to media that we're certain we'll like, even if that means we're essentially reading the same books or watching the same TV series over and over again, each time just repackaged a little bit differently. But while the human in me understands that, the creative in me feels sad for the loss of art and creativity, you know? This means it's no longer going to be financially viable for some people to be creative, to be experimental, to push creative boundaries. Audiences won't be exposing themselves to new things. People won't be expanding their minds as much. And I can't help but feel like that is a massive loss for the world. Trope marketing in general pushes the quick overconsumption of media like books and, basically getting people to read the same books over and over again and just check off a reading goal for the year without really encouraging any original thought or opening the reader up to any new or interesting perspectives. And I'm not saying that all reading or media consumption needs to be groundbreaking or educational or pushing boundaries, but I do think that when that stuff is ignored completely, it is a great loss to both the individuals consuming and creating the media and to society as a whole, basically. I personally love reading books from authors of all genders, ages, sexualities, time periods, countries and cultures because it allows me a glimpse into the lives of people completely different from myself. And that helps me expand my empathy, it helps me understand other people and other perspectives, and I think that's a really, really beautiful thing. However, if you read nothing but, for example, romance books written by straight, white, 20-something female authors in America featuring nothing but, billionaire, forced proximity, opposites attract tropes over and over and over again, and you read nothing else but that, then the chances are you're not really going to open yourself up to new perspectives that much. Sure, you've got the safety and comfort in the repetitiveness, but is that really worth kind of remaining narrow-minded? Again, this isn't the worst thing in the world, but I do think it's a massive shame. Okay, that little rant aside in the beginning, let's take a look at the plot summary for Ward D that is mentioned on Amazon. So medical student Amy Brenner is spending the night on a locked psychiatric ward. All she has to do is make it through the night shifts. Ward D is the hospital's mental health unit, and as a medical student, Amy is required to gain experience on the floor. But little do her colleagues know, it may force her to confront a past she's fought hard to forget. The night starts, the countdown begins. As the hours tick by, Amy grows increasingly convinced something terrible is happening within the ward's tightly secured walls. When patients and staff start to vanish without a trace, it becomes clear that everyone on the unit is in grave danger. Amy never wanted to spend the night on Ward D, now she might not make it out alive. And now I have to admit, I do have a little bit of a fascination with stories of all genres set in mental health units. I think there are some fantastic examples out there, and I think there are some terrible examples out there. I think the big risk with stories and books like this is that it can be done in a way which is extremely demonizing and harmful to people with certain mental health conditions. So these stories are always a bit of a risk. I wrote my script for this as I was reading the book, so these are my real-time reactions that you're going to get. And I wrote in my script at this point, we'll have to wait and see how this one goes, but I can't pretend I have any faith in Frieda McFadden based on the other 2 books of hers that I read. I was right. This is so damn harmful. It's probably one of the worst examples of this that I've seen. And the scariest part, for those of you who don't know, Frieda McFadden is a pen name. I don't think she's ever disclosed her real name, but she often talks about how she is a doctor. Like, she is a medical doctor. And she says this book is dedicated to her patients, which is concerning as hell. It really is. So as I just briefly mentioned, I know Freda throws in like a bunch of twists and stuff in her story, so I decided to write this script as I read the book. So everything I read out to you in this video are my thoughts as and when I was reading this book pretty much in real time. So you are coming on this journey with me. All the predictions I made for the plots were ones that were made in real time. So you are going to kind of see my thoughts as we go along and come on this journey with me. Understandably, spoilers for this entire book. So if you want to read it for whatever reason, please go ahead and do that first. But let's jump into this. So this book opens with our main character, Amy Brenner, receiving a letter telling her she is going to be working on Locked Psychiatric Unit Ward D. I don't know why I tried to do the air quotes then, whatever. And it features a whole bunch of rules which are clearly setting up for drama later, or at least we hope they will. Rules such as you'll be given a numerical code that can be used to leave Ward D, except in the case of an emergency you may not exit the unit during your shift. Now, I've never worked on a psych ward, obviously, but this feels unrealistic. Not being able to leave to pop outside and take a phone call, get some fresh air, go to the canteen, it seems odd, right? That's very odd. Also, using a numerical code, again, seems unrealistic. Surely if this was a secure unit, you would have full-time security, you would have swipe cards for each individual doctor or member of staff so that they could track who is coming in and out when. I feel like using a numerical keypad code, so many things could go wrong with that. It would be very easy for a patient to watch someone do it, and you know what I mean? Like, it feels like there's a lot of problems with that, but let's suspend our disbelief for a minute and just go with this. Other rules include things like do not divulge any personal information to your patients. This includes details about your personal life or home address. I think this is just pretty standard for doctors in general, isn't it? So I'm not sure why it's put on here as like an extra one, other than like to help demonize mentally ill people and be like, oh, you know, they're an extra threat, don't tell them anything. It just... Another one is the following objects are prohibited on Ward D. Alcohol, flammable liquids, thumbtacks, pens, needles, staples, paper clips, safety pins, nail files, tweezers, nail clippers, tobacco products, electronic cigarettes, plastic bags, interesting. Razor blades, weapons, or any item that could be used as a weapon. Completely reasonable, no issues here, except you'll notice when she goes onto the ward, no one actually checks her for these items, and she takes in like a little bag of sandwiches with her, so she does have a plastic bag. Interesting, never mind. And finally, one of the rules is do not expect to sleep during your shift. Looking back now, knowing what I know, going off script slightly, this is just bizarre that she included this, because throughout the book, people are constantly telling her to go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, which I guess kind of could be a plot hole, or it could be a clue that people aren't who they seem to be, I don't know. Also, the don't divulge any personal information. Amy breaks that so many times without any consequences. So again, I don't really see the point of this opening bit when it's all just forgotten about. Also, this last rule about, like, don't expect to sleep during your shift, like, has Frieda McFadden ever actually done a night shift before? Because that just seems standard. No? Is it not? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because my only experience with night shifts is when my dad used to do them in a factory. So that was very different to, like, a doctor's night shift, because my dad was doing manual labour all night, every night, you know what I mean? Like, of course, no one was sleeping, they're operating a factory. Like, I can think of some exceptions, like doctors who do, like, 10 to 12-hour shifts, or, like, double shifts, including a night shift. They will likely have some downtime here and there to nap, but I don't think that's necessarily, like, the norm, right? You don't go to work on a night shift and expect to sleep the whole night. Like, it's a night shift, it's work. You don't get paid to sleep. Like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. So our first actual scene of the book is Amy working in an outpatients unit with patients who are mostly struggling to sleep. Apparently she is so good at her job because all of her patients are super duper grateful for her, because she just goes out of her way to be a super duper doctor and does what other doctors don't do, and that is she decides to listen to them instead of just prescribing sleep meds. Revolutionary. However, Amy can't actually remember a thing about her patients and their needs, even when looking back at her notes. So I think we're supposed to think she's just, like, naturally a talented doctor, but all I really see in her is apathy and laziness. Like, she walks into a room with a patient and looks at her notes and she's like, oh god, I don't remember a thing about this woman. And yet this woman's like, oh my god, you changed my life, you helped me sleep, thank you so much, here's a massive gift. It's really odd. It already feels in this opening scene that the patients are just caricatures, and that it feels to me like Freda is making fun of people who see doctors for mental health struggles. Like, for example, one woman can't sleep because she's missing her cat who died. Amy helps her realise this by, again, revolutionary, listening to her. Wild. And so in response, this woman goes out and buys a new kitten and then gifts Amy a giant, massive portrait of her dead cat, which is bizarre. And also, this portrait never comes up again. We don't know what happens to it, but there you go. It's just in this opening scene to try and make the reader mock people struggling with mental illness. If not to mock people dealing with grief and sleep issues, I don't know what Freda's point was here. Amy talks to her current supervisor about her upcoming Ward D rotation, which is going to be that very night. There's nothing to worry about, he says, in that calm, reassuring voice of his. Remember, you will have the code to exit the unit. You can leave at any time. Right. There's apparently a keypad with a 6-digit code that controls the locked door to the psychiatric unit. But I can't memorize a phone number, and that's only 1 digit more. What if I forget the code and I'm trapped? What then? Seriously? Mate, you're a doctor. Doctors and medical students notoriously have to remember so damn much to pass their med school exams, yet we're meant to believe that she can't memorize a 6-digit number. I only did biomedical science at undergrad, and I already know how much I had to memorize. Like, the idea that a doctor can't memorize a 6-digit code is laughable. And this just proves again why the code in general is a terrible idea. And again, like I said, there's no specific log of like who's entering and exiting at any time. It's like this is a massive, massive plot hole on Freda's part. The first big twist of the book comes at the end of chapter 1, when nearly 10 years ago, or 8 years ago if we're going to be exact, Amy's best friend was a patient on Ward D. Amy visited her once, but shocker, I still remember her matted hair and her wild eyes when I came to visit. She didn't look like my best friend anymore. More like a wild animal closed up in a cage. But the thing that sticks with me most, the thing I will never forget, are the words she spit out at me just seconds before I ran out of the unit, swearing to myself I would never return ever again. You should be the one locked up here, Amy. Again, comparing her to a wild animal in a cage feels so dehumanizing of people with mental health problems. I wanted to give Freda the benefit of the doubt here and see where this goes, but it only gets worse. Okay, right, I just had to go and take Kibi out for a little wee, and it's absolutely freezing, so I've got the jumper out. So, Amy presumably works a roughly 8-hour or so shift on the sleep ward, and then after a 20-minute break, she goes and has to do a 13-hour shift on Ward D. I feel like the 13-hour thing was picked because Freda thinks it's a scary number, and not because she knows anything about actual doctors' work schedules. Also, the 13-hour thing, well, we'll come to it at the end. So it turns out that Amy is going to be on the shift with a fellow med student called Stephanie, and I think this is the first time I've ever seen Frieda McFadden write a female character being nice about another woman. Shocking. Like, genuinely shocking. This is the biggest shock of the book. Stephanie Margulis is one of my more level-headed classmates. She's the kind of person you want to be studying with the night before a test, because she always knows her stuff, but she's not obnoxious about it. She's a calming presence in any room. Knowing she'll be with me tonight makes me feel a little better about the whole thing. Revolutionary. Genuinely. Like, good job, Freda. Are we sure someone else didn't write this for her? No. Give her credit. Good job, Freda. Turns out none of it matters anyway, because Stephanie doesn't even end up being the one working on the ward. She's not even a real character on the page in this book. I should have known it was too good to be true. That is it. That's all we hear of Stephanie. We also learn that Amy has been recently dumped by a man who won't stop texting her. His name is Cameron. In my original script I wrote, I'm sure this will be relevant at some point. Yes and... well, yes. Yes it is. Yeah, kind of. No, but yeah, well, we'll get there. There's another plot point set up here, which is that there's sketchy mobile signal inside the psych ward. How convenient. Also makes no sense, but we'll get there when we get there. Amy worries at this point, what if, I say quietly, at the end of the night they get confused and think that I'm one of the patients there and they don't let me out. You know what would solve this? ID badges that you scan to get in and out. Yeah? But you know, that and the fact that hospitals actually have a record of all the patients there, like, this wouldn't happen. It just would, like, it's not a genuine worry. Like, this wouldn't happen. Okay. Then we got our first flashback of the book to 8 years earlier, and we find out the drama of what happened, through a series of flashbacks that drag on for far too long, and there didn't even need to be as many of them as there are. And, oh god, they escalate so quickly. Anyway, through these flashbacks, we learn basically what happened to get Jade put in Ward D in the first place, what happened between them, blah blah blah. Amy is shopping with her bestie Jade while drinking a peached iced tea, and they're best friends even though they're just so different. Amy is so not like the other girls because she wears the same blue hoodie and jeans every single day, but Jade is just a typical girl because she likes shopping and wears different clothes day to day. Ugh. She also apparently has a signature red handbag, which never, ever, ever comes up again. So there we go. A 6-year-old child in the shop's dressing room nearly convinces Amy to shoplift, but Amy doesn't because this is wrong and bad, and Amy doesn't do bad things. It's the thing that comes up repeatedly. Jade then shoplifts anyway, even though Amy tells her that it's wrong and bad, and Amy doesn't do bad things. But apparently Jade has been rebellious recently, which is shocking. Lately I feel like I barely know her anymore. She used to be more like me, liked to go to school, liked to read, and followed the rules. But over the last year or so, she seems to get all these crazy ideas about things she wants to do. For example, last week she called me at 2 a.m. and asked if I wanted to break into Mrs. McCloskey's pool and go skinny dipping. No, I did not. You shouldn't steal, Jade. I don't want to sound lame and give her a lecture about how stealing is wrong, so I just say, what if you get caught? Then, in just the 3rd chapter, we get our second twist. She waves a hand like this doesn't concern her in the slightest. It concerns me, though. Next year, we're going to be applying to colleges. I don't want to have to explain a shoplifting charge on my application. Everyone does it. Jade gives me a pointed look. You should have taken that sweater. It looked great on you. I snort. You know, that little girl was telling me I should take it. Can you believe that? Jade pulls a shirt out from her bag and holds it up, admiring the glittering lettering on the front. What little girl? The little blonde girl who was standing next to me. I didn't see a little blonde girl standing next to you. What are you talking about, Amy? I roll my eyes. Jade's powers of observation are not exactly stellar. How could she not notice that little girl? The girl stuck out like a sore thumb in her frilly pink dress, all alone like that. And she was right next to me. Wasn't she? Oh my god, the girl was a hallucination. Shocking. Crazy. Wow. And so on. I thought at this point, I was like, was the little girl hallucination? I thought at this point and wrote in my script, was the little girl a hallucination? Or maybe Jade is the hallucination and her best friend has just been like a figment of her imagination the whole time. That's not what happens, but I think it would be good if it was. Because, right, look at how they met. This is the story of how they met. Jade and I have been best friends since the very first day of kindergarten when we discovered we were wearing the exact same dress. White with a pink and purple heart on the chest. We had sleepovers every weekend from ages 9 through to 11. She knows about every single crush I've ever had, and she swore she'd keep my secrets to the grave. I'll never have another friend as good as Jade Carpenter. So it sounds to me like Freda was setting up a she wasn't even real storyline, you know? Jade's shoplifting would affect Amy's college application. They wore the same outfit when they met. One is good, one is rebellious. And I said, if this is where the story's going, it's cliched as hell. But I think that would have been a better story than what we actually got. So I was maybe a bit too harsh here. There's a certain book by Daniel Handler who's the guy who wrote the series Unfortunate Event books under the name Lemony Snicket. I love Daniel Handler's solo stuff. Like, what am I looking for here? I love Daniel Handler's books. All of them. I think they're fantastic. He gets a bit weird at times, but I don't mind that. I think it's pretty cool. And there's a book of his that I won't name in this video because spoilers, but that uses the trope of a certain main character not being real and just being like a figment of their imagination, right? And it was so well done that the first time I read it, I was shocked as hell. But then on rereads, I was like, oh my god, he put all the clues in here. It was great. Very talented writer. Loved that for him. Freda is not that talented, so I think that if she tried to pull this off, she maybe couldn't. But it doesn't matter anyway, because that's not where the story goes. In chapter 4, we're back to the present day, and hours until morning, 13. So we're doing a countdown, right? Did Chris Chibnall write this? While I'm waiting, my phone buzzes inside my scrubs pants pocket. The thought of not being able to use my phone soon is nothing short of terrifying. It's like having my arm amputated. Granted, this may indicate an unhealthy relationship with my phone, but I don't care. I need my phone. What sort of place doesn't have cell phone reception? It's inhumane. Go touch grass. Literally, please, just go. Amy's mum calls her up on the phone and she lies about working on Ward D because her mum knows Jade's history. At this point, I was writing Jade in quotes. Jade. Why do I air quote so much? I don't know. Oh god, right. This is the first time in days I have been pain-free and I'm making the most of it. So if I seem a bit silly at times, it's because I am. But I am loving this right now. I'm still completely exhausted from the days of pain, but I'm feeling so good for once. It's fantastic. For those of you who don't know, uterus issues, nightmare. Also hip problems, but that's an ongoing thing since childhood. Walking is hard. Okay, where are we at? So she's talking with her mum. I cut her off. I'm not interested in psychiatry as a career, definitely not. I would take anything else. Surgery, internal medicine, OBGYN. I'll even be that kind of doctor who does nothing but look at rectums all day, because that's an important job and I could do that. How is this a medical student? How? I went through this whole book thinking she was a fourth year medical student because she's 24. It turns out she's actually a third year medical student. Why would you say one of those doctors who looks at rectum? Like, surely it... Sorry. For a medical student, she's really, really damn dumb. But I can't treat people with psychiatric disorders. It's the one thing I'll never do. She's so shaming. I wonder how Jade is doing, my mother blurts out. I'm sure she's fine, I say, even though I'm sure of no such thing. Do you ever hear from her? A couple of years ago, I got a Facebook friend request from Jade Carpenter. Not only did I not accept the request, I blocked her. Not really. I haven't seen her since the funeral. I get a stab of guilt. 2 years ago, Jade's mother died of a drug overdose. And at this point, I was like, okay, if Jade had a mum, then maybe she's not actually an hallucination. And if, like, her mum is asking about her, she's probably not a hallucination. Boo! That put my theory to bed. Next shock, though. Oh my god. Amy's ex, Cameron, is working on the night shift with her instead of Stephanie because we need more drama, right? I don't know what to say, so I just stare at him. I can't believe I have to spend the entire night with this guy. The worst part isn't even that he dumped me. I've been dumped before and I can handle it. The worst part is why. Trust me, it's not the worst part. This is quite a reasonable reason. At the beginning of the summer, Cam informed me that we couldn't see each other anymore because he wanted to focus all his energy on studying for the board exam, and he was concerned that spending time with me would get in the way of that. That's right. He dumped me for a test. Way to strike a blow to my self-esteem. Amy, test. Amy, test. Well, that's a no-brainer. Never mind that I have to take the exact same test, and yet I was miraculously able and willing to juggle studying with a relationship. She's such a petulant child. I actually hate Amy. She's the worst. And I mean, as the reasons go for being dumped, that's a pretty good one, to be honest. It's not saying anything about you or your character or your deficiencies. Like, medical school takes a hell of a lot of energy and time and effort, so I can completely see someone not wanting to juggle a relationship with their entire career and future. Like, that doesn't say anything about you, does it? That's just a man being responsible. Like, and sorry, if it comes down to uni girlfriend or entire career that you spent presumably a lot of money on at this point because it's America, then yeah, I'd choose the career too every time. Like, but I don't know, maybe that's just me. Maybe that makes me a monster, but Amy just comes across as really, really damn immature. Amy asks Cam, what if one of the patients attacks us? That's pretty unlikely. It doesn't surprise me one bit that Cameron isn't sympathetic. There's clearly something wrong with his empathy gene. Is that a thing? I think I may have learned about that in genetics. I also learned about a disease where your urine tastes like maple syrup. Fine, whatever. I guess nothing bothers you. That's not lacking empathy. That's him being practical and not shaming people just because they're mentally ill. Unlike you, Amy. Like, the only person in this book who lacks empathy is Amy, and you'll see why at the end. She does some ridiculous stuff. Like, it's insane. For God's sake. I can't. Okay, next chapter. 8 years ago again. Another flashback. Amy's complaining because she's failing trigonometry, one of the most basic maths courses that you can take, and yet we're supposed to believe that this woman is in med school. Like, a woman who struggles with basic maths is training to be a doctor. Like, maybe it's different in America and you don't need basic math and science qualifications to study medicine, but I highly, highly doubt that. And again, this feels more confusing when you realise that the author is a doctor herself, so she should have been through all this stuff. She should know this. I don't know. If you want to make it more realistic, make Amy struggle with something that isn't science related. Make her struggle with history or English lit or something like that. Like, why trigonometry? Anyway, Amy's waiting for Jade when she sees the creepy little girl again, and I'm like, we're all thinking hallucination here, right? Yeah, of course we are. Once again, the little girl is all alone. She seems even more out of place here than she did at Ricardo's. Standing outside a high school yard wearing the exact same pink frilly dress she had on the other day with a matching pair of Mary Janes on her little feet. She notices me staring at her and she flashes me that gap-toothed smile. I raise a hand in greeting and she waves back. Maybe she's a sister of one of the students here. That would explain why she'd be in Ricardo's if she was shopping with the big sister who left her all alone. And again, they've left her alone here. I should make sure she's okay. Once again, possible hallucination is interrupted by Jade. This time, Jade is so high she can't study with Amy for trigonometry. Boo-hoo. End of chapter. Like, I don't mind short, quick chapters in books, and I think they're a staple in a lot of thriller books. I think that's fine. But I would prefer if something at least happened in them, you know? Back to the present day, and a 40-year-old nurse called Ramona lets Amy and Cameron into the unit, and Amy says her hair is pulled back into a sensible bun, and she looks like the no-nonsense sort of nurse who's been doing this job for the last 20 years, and will be doing it for another 20 years. I can imagine this woman administering shock therapy without blinking an eye. There's a real obsession with shock therapy in the first, third of this book, and the idea that people who do the treatment, if you can call it that, seem to get some sort of sick pleasure out of it, or at least are indifferent to other people feeling pain. It's very reliant. It's very bizarre. It's all reliant on old harmful stereotypes. Not a fan. Amy and Cameron are given the code to leave the ward, and Amy puts it in her phone because of course she can't possibly remember 6 numbers. We're also told things like, if they enter or exit the ward, a loud alarm blares, so you always know if anyone's coming in or out. That's the thing, I guess. Amy meets her first patient, who believes his father is literally God. That's fun. His name is Miguel. There's also a doctor there called Dr. Beck, who Amy thinks is young and hot, and woo, Dr. Beck. Oh, Dr. Beck shrugs. He thinks his father is God. His words sent chills down my spine, but Cam laughs. Ha ha ha, so he's a schizophrenic then? No, Dr. Beck frowns. He's not a schizophrenic. We don't refer to patients that way. Miguel is a human being, and he's more than his psychiatric diagnosis. He is not a schizophrenic. He's a man who has schizophrenia. Do you understand that? Cam's face turned slightly pink. Right, of course, sorry. And I liked this. This actually, I was like, oh, maybe I've underestimated this book. This is quite good. I like the person first language discussion here. That's good, that's fair. However, it's undermined with the whole, oh my god, I'm so scared and shivering at the thought of a person near me having schizophrenia from Amy. And that continues throughout the whole book. It's ridiculous. Schizophrenia doesn't automatically make a person dangerous or scary like this novel implies. Also, schizophrenia seems to be the only diagnosis they give anyone. I mean, there's a couple of others, but that's the main one. And I'm it's not the only option. The lack of phone signal is brought up again too, and it confuses me, right? Because let's just give you the layout. This is a massive hospital that for some reason is built in a big donut shape. Don't ask me why, but it is. And this ward is literally the entire 9th floor. So a big ring of rooms and a big donut, right? There's plenty of floors above this in the hospital. There's plenty of floors below it. So we're expected to believe that all the floors above and below, where Amy has worked plenty of other times before, have plenty of mobile phone signal and this is fine. But this one random floor in the middle of the building has no phone signal at all, with no explanation for it. So their supervisor, Dr. Beck, who is really, really cute, apparently. He's so cute. Oh my god, he's so really cute. He gestures at a rack of thick blue binders lined up on a shelf above the nurse's station. Those are the paper charts. What I would recommend for the night is for you to read up on a couple of patients and interview them, learn as much as you can about them, and follow them overnight. So much for my plan to hide in the staff lounge all night long. So you're just going to give a couple of trainees free rein with some of your most vulnerable patients with no supervision. I'd like to say this is a plot hole, but his lack of skill as a doctor is actually relevant, so I'll give it that. Also, sorry, it's already 7:30 at this point, right? These patients are going to want some free time in the evening to themselves, I'm sure, because they probably had therapy and treatments and stuff all day, and they need to rest at some point. Not have a couple of students who they don't even know interviewing them at 10 p.m. Because I mean that's, you need a decent amount of time to read the files and I don't know. It's all flawed. It's so stupid. Dr. Beck says, I encourage you to spend time with the patients you're following and really dive deep. Most of them will be happy to talk to you and you can learn a lot. This is the kind of opportunity you won't have later in your training when you're much busier. Really? You wanna really deep dive in the middle of the night? Is that fair on the patients? No. Amy meets her second patient, who is an older woman called Mary, who has dementia, but is here for a very good reason. A reason which the doctor doesn't think Amy needs to know about or learn about. So he just moves on. But apparently it can't be taken that seriously because this woman is allowed to just wander around freely with knitting needles. So what the hell? The opening thing was don't bring any needles onto the ward. This woman is walking around with knitting needles. Come on. Dr. Beck does say they're plastic children's safety needles, completely harmless. She's not a high-risk patient, and knitting keeps her happy, so we let her do it. Otherwise, she gets too restless. Oh, well, that's alright then. I'm sure a suicidal person couldn't do any real damage with a plastic knitting needle, could they? Have you ever met a desperate person? Because they will use anything they can. Seriously, like, this is dangerous as hell. And it feels like, well, it is a massive plot hole. It absolutely is. Like, plastic knitting needles are not completely harmless, as we see later in the book. I still don't understand where she got them from or why she's allowed them. It makes no sense. Dr. Beck warns them that a dangerous patient called Mr. Sawyer is currently in seclusion. There are 2 seclusion rooms, seclusion 1, seclusion 2. They also need the same code to exit the ward to get in and out of those rooms. I promise you're perfectly safe, Dr. Beck flashes a reassuring smile when he sees the look on my face. There's no chance of Mr. Sawyer getting out of that room. He pauses, unless, of course, you let him out. Yeah, that seems safe. Dr. Beck is quiet for a moment. It's so quiet that I can hear a sound coming from inside seclusion 1. It's a terrible sound, barely even human. Something between a groan and a growl. My God, who is in that room? Or should I say, what? Don't worry, I say, we'll stay far away. Like, I'm sorry, don't call a person who is struggling from a mental illness a what? Like, you can't have all this stuff about person-first language and remember these patients are human, treat them well, and then have your main character calling patients what? Like, it's ridiculous, isn't it, Cuckoo? Do you have anything you want to add? This little girl is so grumpy about the rain today, aren't you? You're not happy. I know, you're not happy. May I add a paw, please? Thank you, gorgeous. And it gets worse. What kind of person needs to be locked up that way? Like an animal. It seems cruel and inhumane, but it's not my place to say. Mate, you're the one calling him an animal. That's the only thing here cruel and inhumane. Well, actually, it's not, but you know what I mean. She sees this chart, and I don't dare touch the chart. It feels like even doing that would be a betrayal of Dr. Beck's trust. Or that if I open it, the monster inside that room might come leaping off the page. And now she's calling him a monster. Lovely. Also, if she just read the chart at this point, we wouldn't have any of the rest of the book. Seriously. The chapter ends with Amy seeing that the patient in room 905 has the surname Carpenter, just like Jade. Oh my God, is it her? Yes, it is. Flashback again. Amy judges Jade for her dad not being around and her mum not being strict with rules and how that seemed fun when they were kids, but now she just thinks it's sad because as I follow Jade down the walkway to her ranch-style house, I can't help but notice how desperately in need of repairs it is. The house was a mess back when we were kids, but now it looks like a wolf could easily huff and puff and blow it all down. Would you do that, my little wolf? The 4 steps to get to the front door have nearly disintegrated after several years of snowstorms chipping away at them, and when I grab onto the railing so I don't fall, a large splinter lodges itself in my index finger. Ouch! I cry. Oh, the poor little rich girl never realised how poor people live. Boo-hoo. How hard for her. The screen door is barely hanging off its hinges, but it doesn't matter since the screen has been ripped in half. Jade unlocks her front door and the 2 of us stumble into her living room. What hits me first is the smell. Not that Jade's house ever smelled good exactly, it always stunk of a combination of cigarette smoke and Mrs. Carpenter's perfume, and it definitely smells like those 2 things today, but there's something else, like something rotting. But there's also a sickeningly sweet undertone to the odour. I don't know what it is, but I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to focus on math with that stench in the air. I'll have to breathe through my nose the whole time. Imagine, like, your supposed best friend lives in conditions like this, and instead of being concerned for her, all you're like is like, ew, I can't believe I have to study here. Like, grow up and get her some help. Like, be a decent friend. Amy is not a good person. Neither is anyone else in this book, but still. It's hard to hide my reaction, but I can't very well tell my best friend that her house smells like a big old pile of garbage. Jade tosses her backpack onto the floor, but I'm hesitant to put my own down. Every spot on the floor is occupied by clothes or books or other junk. I start to put it next to the sofa, but a little pile of dishes is already there, and the top dish still has old food caked on it. I wonder if Jade will want to bring the dishes to the sink, but she doesn't seem concerned at all. Yeah, just like you don't seem concerned at all about your friend's well-being. Jade's house was never exactly clean, but this is another level. It almost feels like I'm sitting in the middle of a garbage dump. In the back of my head, I wonder if I should just say something to my mother. Jade would kill me, but it can't be okay to live like this, can it? No, tell your mum. You're both children. Tell your mum. Why are you being so weird, Amy? It's just, I point at the mysterious sticky spot on the coffee table. I don't want to get my bag all dirty, you know? Oh my god, she rolls her eyes dramatically. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. I didn't realise I had to clean for your arrival. Would you like to grab some cleaning fluid and a rag and give the table a once-over? She's been sarcastic, but the truth is, I would. I've never been a huge sucker for cleanliness, but there's something about this house that makes me want to grab a vacuum and a mop and just go to town. Just sitting here makes a creeping, crawling sensation go up the back of my neck. And then a fruit fly buzzes past my ear. Then a second one. I wonder if the creeping, crawling sensation in my neck is not entirely my imagination. And yeah, this is not a healthy way to live. It's absolutely not. However, how about showing some concern, offering to help, speaking to an adult who can help, instead of just, or even just ask her if she's okay, check on her, rather than like sitting there being all judgmental, you know? Jade's mum comes home and is clearly high and drunk and abusive, and again, Amy is all judgy rather than being concerned and kind and looking out for her friend. Like, rather than checking on her friend, she just walks out and leaves her to face the abuse alone, like judging her while she does it. Amy is a terrible, terrible friend. Jade then follows her out of the house and is like, I don't want CPS to take me, please don't say anything, so Amy doesn't. Back in the present day, Amy wants to nosy through Jade's file, but she knows it's an ethical violation, but she really, really wants to. But before she can, she's interrupted by another caricature of a patient who believes he is Spider-Man. She continues to read other people's charts and finds another schizophrenic patient, as though this is like the only diagnosis in the entire unit. Seriously, we've got one person with dementia, one person with bipolar, who we'll find out later, and then everyone else is schizophrenic. Really? I stare at the last page of the chart, not sure what to do. Presumably Mr. Schoenfeld. How do I even say that? His name's Will. We'll call him that. Presumably he's not dangerous. If he were, he would be locked up like Mr. Sawyer. But on the other hand, this is a man who's been hearing voices telling him to murder people. Maybe this isn't the patient I want to see. But in some ways, that's exactly why I want to see him. After all, if you meet someone who is truly crazy, that's the only way to know that you're sane. Sorry, but that is offensive as hell. That is easily and without a doubt one of the most offensive lines in this entire book. It's horrific. When I look inside room 906, I don't know what I was expecting to see. The description in the emergency room note made it sound like William Schoenfeld was a raving lunatic. I know, Mummy can't read, can she? I know. So I'm surprised to find a man in his late 20s wearing a clean t-shirt and jeans. His dark short hair neatly trimmed, his face with a couple of days' growth of a dark beard, and a pair of wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. And he's not pacing the room, ranting and raving. He's sitting in his bed quietly reading a book. So I'm all for characters being flawed and the author making a point to show this and correct it, but it just feels like this isn't done well, you know? And at first I thought like, oh, well, like, this is nice because it's showing that, like, you can have a mental illness and still be, like, normal and attractive and, like, a good person. Like, ugh. No, Frieda McFadden can't even do that. You'll see. This guy looks normal, except for the fact he's hearing voices telling him to kill people. I glanced at the stack of books on his dresser. I hadn't noticed it before, but he was reading A Prayer for Owen Meany, which is one of my favourite books of all time. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone approximately my age reading that before, and I'm not sure how to feel that the first person I've seen reading it is in a psychiatric ward. Always comes back to the judginess. He picks up the thick paperback copy of Owen Meany. This one I've read about 50 times. I've read it 100 times. He laughs. Competitive, are you? Well, like I said, it's my favourite. I love to read, he says. I try reading at least 1 or 2 books a week, and I try to reread at least one Irving book a month. That's impressive, I comment. I don't have time to read more than a few books a year. What do you do for work? So, Amy doesn't have time to read more than a few books a year, but apparently she's read this book 100 times in the last 14 years, starting when she was 10 years old. That makes her rereading this book 7 times every year, yet she doesn't have time to read more than a few books a year. So you're telling me in the last 14 years, you've never read any book other than this one that you just read and then finish and start reading again over and over. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. It's so silly. So even though she's bonding with this man and seeing that he's normal and human, when he says he's an Uber driver, she says to herself, well, that does it. I'm never taking an Uber again. Like, what is with this judgment? I can't deal with it. Can you, Cubes? She can't. She's looking out the window now. We've had so many birds, because it's really, really rainy today, and the birds have come and sat outside this tree, like on this tree outside my balcony, and Kyra's been loving watching them. Haven't you, baby? You've been watching the birdies. Yes, you've been watching the birdies. But you don't want to go out in the rain, do you? No. Bless her. So this chapter ends with her thinking that this guy Will is lying about something, but we don't know what. Now, at 12 hours until morning, Amy says that she doesn't think Will trusts her and diagnoses him with paranoia because, of course, it's got to be that and not just that she's judgy and doesn't deserve to be trusted. Like, it's ridiculous. So she leaves him and then she bumps into Jade, who calls her pathetic, and I am inclined to agree. I scratch a little dry patch on the back of my elbow. You look great, I say almost automatically. Oh, shut up, Amy. She crinkles the bridge of her nose. I'm fat like a house. It's from the medications. They make you want to eat until you explode. Jade isn't fat like a house, as she so colourfully put it. She used to be way too skinny in high school, painfully thin, and now she looks like a healthier weight. But admittedly, she has purple circles under her eyes, and the hair coming out of her ponytail looks matted. I haven't caught her on her best day. So we have ableism and body shaming in this book. Don't you just love it? Jade reveals that Amy had destroyed Jade's life to get to med school. Ooh, ominous. I'll give you a spoiler now. She didn't. She just told the police about something bad she did. And it was bad. Like, we'll see. So Jade says that Will, the guy Amy was just interviewing, is cute. And Amy replies with, Jade? My cheeks burn. He's crazy. He has schizophrenia. Oh, so you've got something in common then, don't you? There have been a few times in my life where I've wanted to smack Jade in the face, and this is one of them. Thankfully, I know enough to restrain myself, but I need to avoid her come 3 a.m. because I won't be thinking as clearly by then. And it just keeps getting worse and worse, doesn't it? Like, I get why Freda put so many schizophrenic characters. You can say schizophrenia or schizophrenia, and I don't know which is right, so I'm just going to keep saying both, I think. But I get why Freda put so many schizophrenic characters in this story, because she clearly wants us to think that's what Amy has too, because, you know, why bother showing a diversity of experiences when you can just hit the audience over the head with something? We get another flashback. I don't understand the point of trigonometry. I've been sitting at my desk in my bedroom attempting to do problems for the last 2 hours, and I'm no closer to having a good understanding of the material. More importantly, I don't understand why I need to know this. Will I ever be at the grocery store and need to know the sign of 30 in order to calculate how much change I'm getting? This is the most stupid and pointless thing ever, and because of it I might get my first C of high school. This is hopeless. Like, I'm sorry, are you serious? The kid who wants to be a doctor, not knowing why she needs trigonometry. Like, there are tons of reasons why a doctor might need to know even just basic trig, right? It helps with understanding how to set bones correctly at the right angles, or where to insert needles for different procedures, and more importantly, it's a basic prerequisite to calculus, which is pretty damn essential for all doctors calculating drug doses and so on. Like, this is a basic thing you need. If you're going to make her a doctor, why, and I said this earlier, why have her struggle with such a basic part of science? Like, make her struggle with something in school, because the trigonometry thing isn't relevant. She just needed to struggle with the subject for later reasons. So why not make it struggle with something that's not relevant to her career, but something that she needed to graduate, like English Lit or history, for example? That would make so much more sense. My mother squints at me. Her greying hair is gathered into a messy bun behind her head. It's not stylishly messy, just messy. She used to be one of the prettiest of all my friends' mothers, but it feels like the last 2 or 3 years she suddenly got older all at once. It's just unnecessary, isn't it? Ridiculous. Anyway, other than this, nothing happens. Back to the present day. Amy is angry because Cameron is a good student and he's good at his job, and I just can't stand characters who look down on others for being hardworking. It's so immature. Amy is so immature. Dr. Beck is just like Amy, apparently, and he rolls his eyes at Cameron making notes on his patient. And at this point, it just feels like Freda, the author, is the immature one in all this. Like, wild. There's a brief discussion on schizophrenia, like about how it usually presents first in a person's teens to early 20s, and that the person experiencing it could have been having symptoms for years without realising this. Again, this is meant to imply to the audience that Amy has schizophrenia and set that up, but it's all quite heavy-handed. In the next chapter, Amy goes back to see the guy Dan, who thinks he's Spider-Man, who originally calls himself Spider-Dan, and so she insists on calling him that throughout the entire book, which again is so unprofessional for a doctor, but here we are. But before then, Amy tells us that Jade was diagnosed with bipolar when she was just 16 years old. Blah, blah, blah. It tends to run in families. They put her on a medication to control it, and then a second medication. She seemed so different once she was on a bunch of medications, like a zombie. She wasn't my best friend anymore. It was like she'd had a frontal lobotomy. And I really hate the general demonization of medication for mental health issues like this, but it's so damn common in this book, I can't help but feel like Freda is against medicating mental health issues. And yeah, she just shames everyone for having them anyway. Things like this stop people getting the treatment they desperately need, and it's so dangerous and harmful. Isn't it, Kookaburra? I feel uncomfortable about the lobotomy comment too, but I can't quite put that into words, so we'll just leave it for now. There's more of Amy interacting with patients with absolutely no empathy, and she calls them strange, she calls them robots, and so on. It feels more like a series of vignettes designed to mock various mentally ill people rather than nuanced characters showing the human side of often misunderstood illnesses, and therefore it's quite uncomfortable to read. This chapter ends with Dan saying, "Damon Sawyer wants to kill every single one of us tonight." Why? My voice is a hoarse croak. Why do you think that? Because that's what he told me he's going to do. So just to demonize ill people even more, this is the guy apparently in isolation. Damon Sawyer. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to take a little break now because my little Koobie is quite grumbly, aren't you? Should we go get some lunch together? Yeah? My little grumble pig? Oh, I know. It's been a hard day, hasn't it? I know. Poor baby can't even go out and play fetch because it's raining so much. You're so grumples, aren't you? I know. I'll be back in a little bit. Hey everyone, I'm gonna have to switch to voiceover for the rest of this video, but I wanted to give you guys a face-to-face explanation as to why, because I know a lot of you have been watching me for a long time and you guys love and adore Kyra as much as I do, and we've had a really rough week, but I'll preface this by saying she's currently fine, she's currently home, she's happy, and she's getting there, but Monday morning this week, she had a seizure in the garden, which she's never had before, and it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. It lasted for about 90 seconds, and I was just completely helpless. I didn't know what to do. I called for help, and no one was around to help us. And then after she came out of it, I carried her into reception in my building, and everyone who works here was wonderful, and they all gathered around and helped us and offered to take us to the vets and everything, but I had a friend coming to take us, and she saw the vet. She's had blood tests that I'm still waiting for the results back on. The vet, she gave me diazepam to give her if a seizure happened again, and then later that night around midnight, she had 3 more seizures in a little cluster, like one after the other, and I had to give her a diazepam for that. And then I called the emergency vet, and she went in and she had to stay in overnight. Thankfully she had no more seizures, and she's on an anti-seizure medication now, and she's so far about 35 hours free without any seizures, which obviously doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet, but it is a really good sign, and it does mean her medication might be working, which is fantastic. We still don't know the cause. I'm still waiting to hear back about the blood tests in case it's caused by it could be a liver issue, it could be a kidney issue, it could be a blood sugar issue, it could be lots of things. If the blood tests don't tell us anything, she'll likely have to go for MRI scans, which is ridiculously expensive, but she's worth it. And for now, I'm just kind of monitoring her. So the side effects of her medication that she's on, it's, oh god, I'm having to give it her at 2 p.m. and 2 a.m, so I'm not sleeping, which is why I look like this. I'm so sorry. And even when I am asleep, I'm like ready to wake up any second the minute I hear her move or anything, because I'm so alert. So she's on anti-seizure medication, but the side effects are she's very thirsty, so she's peeing a hell of a lot, and it's also making her very like wobbly. So she's kind of wobbling a lot as she walks. Her back legs especially keep slipping out from under her, so I'm having to kind of keep a watch on her all the time. She's obviously not allowed to go on any long walks. She's not allowed play fetch or anything like that, which now she's starting to feel a little bit herself again. She is happy to grumble at me about, and I am more than happy to hear those grumbles, because it means she's being a little bit more herself.
And I've got such a messy brain about this. She's also got a nasal spray if she sees us again and it lasts for more than 3 minutes, or it's another one where they're repeated. She's got a nasal spray to have this time. Last time it was diazepam up her bum, which was not pleasant for either of us, but it did work, which is the important thing. This time it's a nasal spray. So thankfully I've not had to use it yet. And hopefully I won't have to, but I'm just going to kind of see how things go. But for the next couple of weeks I've got to keep the flat really dark and really quiet, which is why I'm filming this in another room while she's in the darkened living room at the minute, and the bedroom's all dark as well. And I've got to like just stop her being overstimulated and just keep her calm and keep things quiet. But obviously I've just been hit with like £1,000 of vet's bills, and I have more to come, so sadly not working isn't an option right now because I need to pay for those, which is a stress and a worry in itself, but here we are. So my solution is going to be I'm going to have to just voice over this and try and do it quietly. It's probably going to be quite low effort because 1, I'm exhausted, and 2, I've got to try and keep Kyra calm, so I hope you can understand that and forgive that. But I just want to thank you all for your patience and understanding, and I just felt I owed you a little face-to-face explanation because I know Kyra means a lot to a lot of you guys as well. So I didn't want to worry you, but I do think it's important to kind of explain where we are. Yeah, and just kind of keep you in the loop. So yeah, thank you, and I hope you can try and enjoy the rest of the video.
So, despite her being nothing but rude and mean to him, Cameron is nothing but nice to Amy, including having brought her favourite cakes as a snack, like, on the job, and promising that he'll keep her safe if anything happens on the ward. And he says that it was a mistake to break up with her. Like, I don't normally say this in a Frieda McFadden book, but Cameron actually seems like a decent guy, and yet she completely demonises him. And yet there's so many books where she excuses actually abusive men, so it's really confusing. Again, I didn't expect to be saying this in a Frieda McFadden book, but I think we deserve justice for Cameron. Anyway, their drama is interrupted by Will walking in to play the piano. There's this awkward sort of flirting between Amy and Will, and at this point I was like, please don't set them up for a romance, but this is Frieda McFadden, and I don't think she knows how to write non-problematic romances, so here we are. Amy, of course, breaks one of the core rules by sharing with him about her relationship drama with Cameron, which is, of course, breaking the don't share personal information rule. In the next chapter, there are 10 hours to go until morning, and Amy goes on and on some more about how dirty this whole ward is. This could be a commentary on the need for more funding in mental health facilities, and also, like, why are there no cleaners on the ward? Like, hospitals are filled with cleaners and maintenance staff. Like, why are they not here? Why is it just this one doctor and one nurse? It seems, I don't know, anyway. So I feel like it could be a commentary on the need for more funding in psychiatric units, but instead, because Freda's writing it and the way she writes and the way she has like no sensitivity for anything, it just feels judgmental and nasty, especially as every description is interspersed with Amy hearing like banging coming from Sawyer's cell and her thinking that, oh my god, he's gonna kill us all. Oh my god, he's so evil because he's here. If this was like a criminal psychiatric ward, you know, like a facility for criminals with mental health problems, then I might understand it, but this is just a regular psychiatric ward for regular patients, like regular people off the street. Like we've already heard, Will is supposed to be like an Uber driver. Mary is just an old lady. There's nothing to indicate that any of these patients has ever done anything to hurt anyone at this point, so they're being demonized for nothing other than having an illness which is out of their control, and yet they're here being treated for. They're doing the responsible thing. They're in the best place. Well, they're supposed to be in the best place for them, and they're demonized for it, and I just don't think that's fair. Jade shows up again, but before we get any action, we cut back to another flashback. Amy and Jade are meeting up to study, and Jade turns up being really hyperactive, and I think this is meant to show her having a manic episode with her bipolar, but again, it's written quite poorly, and the depictions of bipolar in this is not good at all. During this apparent manic episode, Jade steals the answer to a test paper in the school, and it's while she's doing this that Amy sees the little girl again, and Amy's like, I would never steal a test. I would never cheat. I'm far too good for that. End of chapter. Back in the present day, and Jade tells Amy that she looks terrible, And we also learned that Jade's life has been so terrible and awful and dreadful because everyone knows if you have mental health problems, you can never amount to anything or be happy, right? Yeah, it's one of those books. When I saw you, I just felt like such a loser. Here you are, basically living the life you always wanted. I mean, you're going to be a doctor, and here I am. I'm nothing, I'm nowhere. And honestly, I don't know if I'm ever going to do anything with my life. I couldn't even hold down a freaking waitressing job. Even my mum was able to do that. Amy then tells Jade a bunch of stuff about her personal life and about her relationship with Cameron. And again, I'll remind you of that rule that we literally opened the book with. Do not divulge any personal information to your patients. This includes details about your personal life or your home address. So she's breaking it again for the second time in like 3 pages. And I'd like to say there were some consequences for this, but there's really not. Like, just nothing at all. Jade tells Amy that she should hook up with Will. Sure, she says. He's your type, right? I heard the two of you bonding over the same dorky books you always liked in high school, and it's not like either of you has anything better to do tonight, so why not? I stare at her. Because he's my patient, and he's on a psych ward. Ugh, you always were such a square. I don't even know what to say to that, but I can say with 100% certainty I am not hooking up with anyone tonight. Not Cam, not Will. All I want is to get out of here in one piece. Yeah, if she did this, if she hooked up with a patient, then surely that would be her losing her medical license immediately, right? Just, ew. And I'm sorry, but the psych ward thing shouldn't matter. Simply him being your patient is reason enough to stay the hell away. You didn't need to add on that second judgy bit. Ramona, the nurse, interrupts them to give Jade her medication. So at this point, I was like, okay, Jade definitely isn't an hallucination, right? She's definitely here. If she's getting medication stuff, this definitely confirms it. Amy goes to see Mary, the older lady, the knitter, who tells Amy that she should go out with that nice Dr. Beck, which is also inappropriate. Like, he's her boss. Why does everyone think that this woman needs a man, or that all these men will want her? Like, what's so special about Amy? But also, like, it's just insulting and unrealistic to be like, oh, you're a supposedly educated young woman, you must need a man. Hate it. Amy narrates that hooking up with attendings is definitely frowned upon, even if they have sexy dimples. Of course, she adds, you can't tell him you're interested. That would look desperate. But you could flirt with him, maybe put on a little makeup, a nice dress that shows off your bosom. And if you wear the right pair of shoes, like, the misogyny is just woven throughout every inch of this text. And in some books, I might be like, oh, well, you know, Mary's an older lady. It's meant to show, like, that was just the mindset at the time, blah, blah. No. This is just how Frieda McFadden writes. I genuinely think she might believe this nonsense. It's then implied that Mary may or may not, we don't know, have killed her cheating husband years ago, but she's adamant that she didn't because she would never kill a man for just cheating, right? And then she says she hates knitting, but she keeps the plastic needles for protection, of course. And then she gives one of them to Amy for protection. And again, I'm sorry, but this wouldn't happen. She wouldn't be allowed to have these plastic knitting needles unsupervised at all in the first place. And this just gets more unrealistic as the book goes on, so get ready for this. Amy then goes to read Jade's chart because she's given it by the nurse, but just as she's about to, the power goes out on the entire floor, and it's like, ooh, ooky spooky. Ramona, I say urgently, if the lights are out, does that mean the locks on the doors won't work anymore? She's quiet for long enough that I'm starting to worry she's not there anymore. I don't know, she says finally. Like, are you kidding me? This is supposed to be a nurse who's worked there for 20 years and would know something about the basic security on the ward, right? Come on. At this point, I was like, Ramona's clearly not who she says she is because she would know this basic information. And also, is this not just like another massive design flaw in this whole stupid electronic lock and code thing with no security there? Yes, it is. The chapter ends with the lights coming back on and one of the other patients appearing covered in blood, apparently. We're now 43% of the way through the book, and I am not invested in a single character. It all just feels so hollow, you know? Seeing a man covered in blood as a trained medical professional, Amy does the sensible thing and immediately starts screaming like a child instead of helping him before the nurse reminds her that it's not actually blood, it's jelly. Or jam, if you're English. I'm sorry, but what sort of 24-year-old medical student can't tell the difference between jam and blood, and if she sees someone with suspected injuries, instead of helping them, she just screams? Like, I'm sorry, but this is your job. Why would you... This book could not be more unbelievable. I can't stop screaming. Miguel is standing in the middle of the hallway, stark naked, streaked in blood. What happened to him? Did Damon Sawyer get free? Is he currently roaming the hallways with a knife, ready to kill every single one of us? And where would he get a knife from, this doesn't make sense. I reach for the knitting needle in my scrub pants. Miguel, Ramona cries. Where did you get all that jelly? It takes me a few minutes to process her words. Miguel is not covered in blood. He's actually covered in red jelly, all over his naked body. Now that my eyes have adjusted to the light, it's very clear what the red substance is. I'm sorry, I mumble to Ramona, embarrassed. I thought it was blood. She laughs. Seriously? It doesn't look anything like blood. Well, maybe she's right. But she didn't have to say it like that. Yeah, she kinda did. You're being stupid. Dr. Beck turns up, and instead of helping this patient to get cleaned up and put some clothes on, he just forces him, as he is, into one of the isolation rooms. And at this point, I was like, I don't think he's a real doctor. Amy narrates, how will that man possibly be okay? He thinks his father is God. He's alternated between wearing no clothing and all of his clothing, and he smeared his entire naked body with strawberry jelly. I'm going to hazard a guess and say this man does not have a bright future ahead of him. And again, can we not with this demonization, please? Making it seem like these are completely hopeless illnesses when they're not. People told me this book was an ableist mess and that was why I should review it, but I didn't quite realize how bad it was. Amy finally realizes that she hasn't seen Cameron in a while and wonders where he is. Is he dead? Ooh, more ooky spookiness. 7 hours to morning and she still can't find Cameron, and we get the revelation that he's actually a piece of crap with a temper, so maybe my justice for Cameron comment was too soon. Something not everyone knows is that Cam has a temper. He manages to do a good job of hiding it, and to be fair, he doesn't fly off the handle very often, but he acts like this good-natured guy all the time, and it's easy enough to keep the act going with friends, but it's harder to hide it from the girl you're dating. I think Freda included this just so if Cam is dead, we don't feel too sad about it, and we start to root for her and Will to get together. The first time I ever witnessed Cam's temper was when he found out he didn't get a spot in a prestigious year-long research fellowship on the West Coast. We were hanging out in his bedroom, sitting together on his bed when he got the email. His left arm had been slung over my shoulder, and he pulled it away. What the hell? Cam's square face had turned a shade of pink. They didn't pick me? Seriously? I tried to look over his shoulder at the email, but he'd already tossed it to the side of the bed. And then he leapt to his feet. I can't believe this, he ranted. How could they shaft me that way? Cam was almost shouting now, but I didn't genuinely know how upset he was until his fist flew into the wall of his room. The plaster crunched under his knuckles, giving way to create a fist-sized crater in the wall. He yelped and yanked his hand away while I jumped off the bed. For a moment I wasn't sure whether to flee or see if he was okay, but the colour in his face had returned to normal, and he wasn't shouting anymore. He was just cradling his hand. I ended up having to drive him to the emergency room to get x-rays of his hand, which thankfully did not show a fracture. While I was driving him home at 2 a.m. with his right hand in a splint, he hung his head and said to me, I'm sorry, I overreacted like that, Amy. At least he was embarrassed about the whole thing and he did apologise. It wasn't the first time I saw that flash of anger. Most of the time Cam did manage to keep his temper under wraps, but it was there, lingering under the surface, waiting to be unleashed. So the last thing I want to do is piss him off. And yeah, I admit this is not cool. A man who punches and breaks things when he's angry can always be dangerous to be around, so you gotta be careful around them. Cameron is still missing when Jade shows up again and says, I can't believe you never ended up seeing a shrink. End of chapter. Flashback again, and Jade tries to tell Amy to cheat on the test again. Amy hallucinates the little girl again. Nothing new happens. Back in the present day, Amy says Cameron must have left the unit. It's the only possible solution, because I've looked everywhere and he's not here. Maybe he got sick of not having any reception on his phone and he decided to step out at the worst possible moment. I can't blame him. I'm tempted to do the same, but I'm an incorrigible rule follower. Except, you know he didn't leave because you haven't heard the alarm that goes off when the door opens. And no, you're not a rule follower because you've already been breaking the no speaking about your personal life rule all night. Come on. There's only been one time in my life when I broke the rules and did something immoral, and I paid dearly for it. Clearly, I was thinking this was something about the cheating on the test thing, right? And it is. And I was like, who cares? But oh god, just wait till you get there. It's so damn ridiculous. Oh my god. Okay, never mind. Amy tries to sleep, but she can't, so she goes to borrow a book from Will. And she enters his room without permission while he's in the bathroom, and she starts rifling through his things, which again feels like an invasion of privacy and something that a doctor shouldn't do. But while she's doing that and being nosy, she finds this hollowed out book filled with the antipsychotic medication he's supposed to be taking, like stuffed inside. Amy is immediately petrified because we all know that ill people are super scary, remember? That's the message of this book so far. Oh my god, Willie's going to come out and realise I've been going through his books and discovered his secret. He's already got paranoid schizophrenia, and now I've discovered he's not on medication. What's he going to do when he realises I know the truth? But she just bluffs her way out of it and borrows a different book from him before he kicks her out, which is understandable. Of course, after I get out of this room, I have a real dilemma. Will has not been taking his medications, and the entire reason he's hospitalised here is to get better. Dr. Beck needs to know about this. I don't want to rat Will out, but it's not like he confided in me. I discovered his secret by accident. And I'm sorry, but where's the dilemma? You're a doctor, or training to be. Your priority should be his well-being and health. You go see your supervisor, who is a trained doctor, and tell him and allow him to decide what happens from here, right? Is this not the obvious thing to do? Do they not have basic training for this? I don't know. So she does go and see Dr. Beck, who is looking at her intently. Now I'm starting to second-guess myself. If I tell him the truth, it won't be good for Will. They may have to force him to take his medication, and whatever that involves, it won't be pretty. But actually, that's to his benefit. He wants to get better, doesn't he? You can't go through life hearing voices in your head. He's been pocketing his medication, I blurt out. I found a whole bunch of them inside his book. I found a whole bunch of them inside a book in his room. And I can't help but feel like so much of this book is actually against psychiatric medicine. You know, it's like she demonizes people for having mental health issues, but she also demonizes them for getting help and taking medication for it. It's very bizarre. But you know, hey, at least Amy did tell her supervisor, which is good. There's only one thing. I feel guilty ratting out Cameron, but I have to say something. I'm starting to freak out that I can't find him. I don't know where Cameron went. I think he might have left the unit. Oh. He looks back into his office. Actually, Cameron left a message on my machine. Apparently he had some family emergency and had to leave immediately. I guess that solves the mystery of what happened to Cam and why I can't find him anywhere. But it's strange that he would leave a phone message with that information, especially when Dr. Beck is right here on the floor and pretty easy to locate. Why wouldn't he talk to Dr. Beck directly? And also, why wouldn't Cam tell me if something happened? It's not like we're total strangers. I see. Except, like I said earlier, like, we didn't hear him leave, did we? Like, we'd have heard that alarm go off if he left the building, if he went out through the door, if he used the code. And now Dr. Beck here is clearly lying, right? So here was my working theory at this point. Dr. Beck and Ramona are actually patients and have kidnapped the real Dr. Beck and Ramona and locked them in the seclusion room. Dr. Beck is actually Damon Sawyer, and Amy is only going to realise when she finally gets the phone signal again, and her friend is like, no, Dr. Beck isn't cute, he's something. In response to, that text she sent her earlier being like, oh my god, he's so cute, and then all hell will break loose. And this also explains why Ramona was confused to see them at first, and why she doesn't know the basic security stuff on the ward, right? That's my working theory. Oh, and also, Cam has actually been locked in the seclusion room with them, and Mary gave her the knitting needle to protect herself because she knows, and everyone's ominous, we're all gonna die, is because they obviously know too, and something. But here's where I was like, okay, there's an obvious hole in my theory. Dr. Beck and Ramona clearly know the code to get in and out of the block, right? Out of the ward. So they could do that if they wanted to. So what is their long-term plan here? That doesn't make sense. So in that case, my theory is nonsense. But also, a lot of what Frieda McFadden writes is nonsense. So this could still be true. Jade appears and is like, oh my god, I can't believe you ratted out Will. Like they're teenagers having been caught smoking or something, instead of, Amy being an adult woman responsible for the healthcare of a vulnerable individual because it's literally her job. Ugh. Jade starts threatening to tell Dr. Beck, who I'm now writing in quotes because I don't believe he's the real Dr. Beck, that Amy has been having hallucinations too, and Amy is like, oh no, don't do that, because these two talk like they're actual children, even though they're supposed to be adults. Wild. After not seeing each other for 8 years, Jade is suddenly like, oh my god, I can't believe you don't want to be my friend anymore. Like, literally those exact words. Like, they're 6 years old on the playground. Back at the nurse's station, and Ramona has disappeared this time. Ooh, more ooky spookiness. So Amy starts reading Jade's file and finds out that she has a diagnosis of bipolar type 1, and she had a recent manic episode where her and her boyfriend decided to rob a bunch of banks, and she was caught, but instead of going to jail, she ended up here. Again, I'm super confused because Again, I don't know about the American healthcare system or the American justice system, so I might be wrong. So please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But aren't there different facilities for criminals with mental health conditions and facilities like this that are just open to the public psychiatric wards? Like, are they not different units where like a criminal one would have like higher security and stuff like that, right? Sure, I don't know. Like I say, I'm English, so I don't know a lot about this, but I did try and Google it, and a few links I saw suggested that just a case of bipolar would not be enough to get someone who'd been arrested for bank robbery sent to a psych hospital rather than jail. But even if it was, it would be a specialist secure ward and not a general ward where the patients are self-admitted and the majority are just like regular people. And sorry, Kyra's having a little grumble in the background because she wants to play and the vet says she's not allowed, bless her. You grumpy, my baby? Come here, come have a snuggle. Thankfully, she's definitely feeling more herself at the minute, but her body hasn't quite caught up with her mind yet, sadly. So Amy hears a gagging noise and goes to investigate, and she hears it from the inside of seclusion room 2, and then she sees blood seeping out under the door. And again, you'd think she'd have basic training for a situation like this and she wouldn't freak out and she'd know what to do, especially on a ward like this. They give her the protocols of like, if you see this, do this, if you see this, do it. But no, instead she's just freaking out. And again, I was like, so either this ward is so poorly run that they don't give out training, or Dr. Beck isn't a real doctor. So she runs to go find him anyway, only when she returns there's no blood. Is it another hallucination? Or are the cleaners just very efficient around here? Who's to say? This, again though, it makes no sense to me because like either it's a hallucination or this is not a big ward, right? She can walk around the whole thing in like 2 minutes. So the time it takes her to run to his office, get him and come back is like probably 1 to 2 minutes. You expect me to believe that, and I'll just tell you this now, a spoiler, it wasn't an hallucination, it was real blood. So you expect me to believe that in the time it took her to run to his office, say, hey, come with me, and then get back, in that maximum 2 minutes, maybe 3 at a push if we're being really, really generous, Ramona has supposedly, because it was apparently Ramona who cleaned it up, like, we'll get there, okay? You want me to believe that she was out of sight, came into view with a full cleaning cart full of stuff, cleaned up this blood without leaving a single trace, and toddled off to do whatever and dispose of all the stuff she needs, and then comes back, all in the space of about 3 minutes. Is that what you want me to believe? Because I don't. And that's apparently what actually happened in this book, and it makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. This chapter is full of incredibly stupid lines as well, like, we're gonna have to call 911. Or, actually, I guess we're inside a hospital, so there's no need to call 911. I'm sure he'll have to go straight to the emergency room, if he's alive at all. Like, I'm sorry, but you can't convince me that an actual doctor wrote this, and they want us to believe that the woman saying this is a third-year medical student. Like, you can't. Dr. Beck tells her that, like, clearly she's going through something, so she's relieved of her duties and to go get some sleep in an empty patient room. And I'm like, again, that seems unrealistic, right? If you're going to allow your doctors to sleep on the job at night, surely there would be little staff beds, wouldn't there? Anyway, end of chapter. Flashback again, and Jade and Amy have been caught cheating on the test. Jade is kind of casually racist towards the janitor who told on them sneaking into the classroom before the test, so that's just not nice at all. And it's never called out. It's just kind of accepted as normal within this book, so okay. There's also a lot of really unnecessary body shaming of the teacher who caught them, which again, I don't know why it's in here. I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. And then back in the present day, Jade has seen everything and knows that Amy is, or she thinks that Amy is still having hallucinations. And I'll just say this, right? Amy is being so damn irresponsible. Like, I know she's got this internalized ableism going on because Frieda McFadden's writing her, and she wrongly believes you should be ashamed of being mentally ill, so she doesn't want to admit it. But if a doctor is in charge of vulnerable patients and may or may not be hallucinating themselves, That is so completely dangerous and irresponsible to not do anything about it. She's not just risking harm to herself, but countless other already vulnerable people. And knowing this, it's impossible to like Amy as a character because she's just putting so many people in danger. It's horrible. And especially because Freda seems to write her like we should be agreeing with her and have sympathy with her and be like, oh, well, if we were in that situation, we'd probably do the same thing. They agree she's a good person deep down. It's like, no, I don't think she is. I don't believe she's a good person deep down. I think she's irresponsible and a danger to others. You can write characters who are bad people without trying to make the audience have pity for them because of the way they've harmed others, Freda doesn't do this. Amy goes back into the lounge area and she's alone, and she says, and then I see him, the dark figure in the corner of the room, waiting for me, and the door slammed shut. I don't even have time to scream. There's a lot of screaming done in this book. Which she does scream a lot, and we actually see her scream far more than we see her acting like a real medical student, so that's something. This dark shadowy figure is Will, and he immediately covers her mouth with his hand, but it's okay because remember, he's hot, so he's not actually a bad guy. I wonder how long he's been waiting for me in this room. The best I can say is he doesn't seem to have a weapon, and when his hazel eyes meet mine through his glasses, there's no malice there. If anything, he looks just as scared as I do. Please don't scream, he says, I need to talk to you. See, he's a good guy, really. Will reveals that Amy was not hallucinating. He saw the blood too. So, our next plot twist in this exciting thriller is that the cleaners are just that good. Oh, no, wait, no, apparently that's not what we're meant to take away from this. Never mind. He reveals that nurse Ramona got rid of it. And again, this to me is proof she isn't a real nurse because one, what nurse working single-handedly on a whole floor of a hospital would actually have the time to drop everything immediately and clean up a giant spill the minute it happens? Like, come on, we all know how hard real nurses work and how they don't have time for anything. Same thing with how, like, at the start of the book, we just saw Ramona sat there flipping through a magazine. What nurse has time for that? None that I know. And two, this is the plot hole I mentioned earlier. Do you really expect us to believe that a giant blood spill leaking out under a door could be cleaned up in the approximately 2 minutes it takes to run to an office and back? And to the standard that it would need to be cleaned in a hospital? Like, that is human waste, potentially human toxic waste. There are procedures in place for how to properly clean up things like blood spills. You definitely smell chemicals and stuff afterwards, wouldn't you? Like, there's no way that... No. Ramona's not a real nurse. Amy then thinks this is a good time to tell him that she knows he hasn't been taking his medication, so it's hard to trust him. And he nods slowly. Okay, I can see why you would feel that way, but honestly, I don't think I need those medications. The voices, they go better on their own. It must have been, one of those things. One of those things? Look, he grits his teeth. I wanted to take the medications, okay? I took them in the emergency room, but you feel real crappy on them. I couldn't handle it. The side effects. I don't know what to say. So again, there's more demonization of medical treatment for mental health issues, and again, this feels really dangerous. Again, I'm no expert in this. I just did a quick Google search here. But if he's really schizophrenic, then hallucinations will not just stop by themselves. They don't even always stop when people are taking the medication they need to. It's not something that just cures itself and goes away. And if Amy had even been doing like the basic amount of research for her job, then she would know that either A, he's lying, or B, he's been misdiagnosed, but she doesn't seem to admit either of these things. Amy being a medical student is not actually relevant to this plot at all, because she doesn't do anything doctory the whole book. Like, she could have just been anyone who happened to be stuck on this ward overnight. She could have been a cleaner. She could have been a nurse, a porter. She could have even been another patient. Because she could have been anyone else, because her supposed medical knowledge and training never, ever, ever play a role in this book at all. Will also reveals that hours and hours ago, he heard Cameron screaming, and he just didn't bother to tell anyone or do anything or check on him because reasons. But when he went out into the hall a while afterwards, the door to Seclusion Room 1 was shutting. Told you so, he's in there. This is so predictable. Of course, Amy can't believe him because he has a mental illness, which she just has to remind us about again. I have to admit, he's building a very strong case, but I have to remember that I'm talking to a man with paranoid schizophrenia. A man who has been hearing voices telling him to do terrible things, and he's decided it wasn't necessary for him to take his medications. Of course he's going to think something suspicious is going on. That's part of his disease. But there's some kind of rational explanation for everything. There's got to be. And this book is so repetitive, because Freda thinks her readers are stupid, or she's just trying to pad out the page count. I don't know. Will convinces Amy that she needs to leave the ward and go somewhere so she can get phone signal and try and call Cameron, but when she gets to the front door, oh my god, next twist, the door code she was given doesn't work anymore, and she is trapped. Oh my god, who saw this coming with a silly little thing like using a numerical code instead of swipe cards and a security guard? And who saw this coming? All of us. We all saw this coming, didn't we? This is, like I say, another reason the whole code system is stupid. We also find out that at this point the landlines aren't working, the internet isn't working, computers aren't working. Like, none of the apparent security features in this hospital make any sense. This is also stupid. Surely at this point, like, if you want to get out, just do something like set off a fire alarm, right? Like, that should open the doors and stuff. Because, like, if it doesn't, then that is a health and safety nightmare. But anyway. Also, what about emergency exits? How are there no emergency exits in this book? It seems like an awful idea, right, to have one big circular ward with only one locked door in and out. Like, if there was emergency, people would get crushed in the panic. There's so many plot holes in it, like basic plot holes in this from a woman who's supposedly a doctor. I don't need to check the code because I know it by heart. 347244. I've been reciting it to myself all night in case I need to get out of here. And then just, a couple of paragraphs later, I type it in again this time, trying to steady my shaking hands. 347244. That's it. That's the code Dr. Peck typed in this morning. I could recite it in my sleep. Amy says she'll go and ask Ramona, the nurse, and he's like, can you trust her? Of course she can't. This is a woman trusting another woman in a Frieda McFadden book. That would never happen. Will says it in a way that makes it sound like I would be an idiot to respond in the affirmative, but I have to remind myself again that paranoia is part of his diagnosis. Of course he's going to come up with some crazy conspiracy theory when in reality there's probably a logical explanation for all this. And seriously, she's recycling lines at this point. Over like 2 pages, she said, I have to remember that I'm talking to a man with paranoid schizophrenia. I have to remind myself that paranoia is part of his diagnosis. Of course he's going to think something suspicious is going on. Of course he's going to come up with some crazy conspiracy theory. There's some kind of rational explanation for this. In reality, there's probably a logical explanation for all this. These were published 2 pages apart. Like, where is her editor? And if you want an added bonus, just 3 or so pages later, we also get, I remind myself that Will himself is not entirely benign. He's paranoid and coming up with conspiracy theories in his head. It's the same thing every time he's on page. The same thing is said about him in the same format. It's ridiculous. Either she thinks her readers are dumb, or she is that stupid and needs to remind herself, or she's just padding out the page count. I don't know. It's very frustrating though. When Amy confronts Ramona, Ramona tells her that she wasn't cleaning blood, silly, it was just more strawberry jam. Ugh, what a silly goose. Problem solved. Let's end the book there and go home and be happy. Amy asks if Ramona can open the door for her, and Ramona tells her, oh Amy, I wish I could, but when the fuse blew, the doors reset. The passcode doesn't seem to work anymore, and the phones went out too. Unfortunately, we may be stuck here until the morning. My stomach sinks. There's no other way? I mean, we have to have a way out. What if there's a fire? Believe me, I'm not happy about this, Ramona says. But with the computer system down for the night, undergoing maintenance, I'm not sure what we can do. We just better hope there isn't a fire, right? Even if this wasn't complete and utter nonsense, this is a terribly unsafe system. Like, what the hell? No hospital would run like this, would it? No, I can't believe it. Amy thinks she sees Will go into Jade's room, but then she's like, nah, I must have imagined it. And instead of going to check, she just moves on. We get a flashback, and so far, every flashback chapter has included Amy drinking peach iced tea. And I was like, is this just meant to show she's like a quirky girl with hobbies and interests like drinking peach iced tea? But then I was like, no, I'm going to go with the peach-induced hallucinations theory because damn peaches. And I was making a joke here in my script, but it actually turns out I wasn't far off. So this is complete nonsense. We'll get there, don't worry, we'll get there. Amy's mum is like, so, is Jade having issues? Her mum has mental health problems, so of course her daughter must too. And Amy is like, oh my god, mum, shut up. And Amy says, I can't tell her the truth though, about her being the one hallucinating. I don't want her to look at me the way she looks at Jade. If she finds out I'm the one hallucinating, will she still love me as much? She always told me how proud she is of me and my good grades. She won't be proud of me anymore when she knows the truth. And the stigma in this book is just unreal. Isn't it, Cuckoo Bean? Yeah, even Kubi's grumbling at it. Back in the present day, and Freda has stopped bothering to count down the hours until morning, so who knows when this is taking place. Sometime in the night. Anytime. All the time. Who really cares? Amy needs to sleep, so she decides to try and sleep on the sofa in the patient's lounge, because she will not sleep in an empty patient bed, because she looks so awful that if I were to fall asleep in one of the rooms, I could easily be mistaken for a patient. All I'm missing is the wristband. And yeah, that's not how any of this works. You can't just diagnose someone from their appearance. You're not going to be locked up in a psych ward because you slept in a bed. You can't tell who is and isn't ill by just looking at someone. This book is awful. This book is so awful. Amy falls asleep. When she wakes up, Spider-Dan is standing over me, apparently watching me sleep. This man is the craziest person on Ward D, with the possible exception of Damon Sawyer. Like, how about, as a doctor, we don't compare our patients to each other, call them crazy, or rank them on a crazy scale? I'm pretty sure that's psychiatric medicine rules number 1, 2, and 3. No? But hey, I'm not the doctor, am I, Freda? No. At this point, I looked at reviews of this book and found this one quite apt. 1 star. It's a bold move to dedicate a book to your patients, and then spend the entire book degrading mentally ill psychiatric patients. Normally her books are harmless trash that I consume like reality shows, but this one is legitimately problematic. Do not effing recommend. I agree. Dan says that he's here to protect Amy and that he won't let Damon Sawyer, who, I'm just going to say something. Ridiculous name, by the way. Ridiculous name. Could she have gone more stereotypical? He won't let Damon Sawyer hurt Amy. Dan seems to know who he is as well because he says, he came into my room, Spider-Dan explains. He was looking for you, but I didn't tell him where you are. I won't let him hurt you. Oh my god, I am officially creeped out. How could Damon Sawyer be looking for me? He doesn't even know who I am. I just came here for the first time earlier this evening. Why would he be looking for me? And why isn't he locked in Seclusion 1? He's locked up, I tell Spider-Dan. No, he's not. He gives me a meaningful look. He got out earlier tonight. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. We all saw this coming, didn't we? And we all know Dr. Beck is Damon Sawyer, right? Like, it's the obvious anyway. This chapter ends with a woman screaming. Surprisingly, it's not Amy for once. I have 2 choices when I hear the screams. Either I can hide or I can see what's going on. I decide to check it out. It's an uncharacteristically brave choice on my part, but I need to know what's going on, and the screams sound disturbingly familiar. Like, Amy is such a non-character. And I'm sorry, but again, you're working here, you're a doctor. You hear a patient scream, you go and help them because that's your job, right? The screaming is from Mary, the old lady with dementia. Damon Sawyer, she screams as spittle flies from her lips. Damon Sawyer! It takes both Dr. Beck and Ramona to restrain her. For a woman of almost 80 years old, she sure has a lot of energy. She's got one of those steel knitting needles gripped in her right hand. Ramona has to wrestle it loose. It clatters to the floor and rolls away. 1, it's the middle of the night. Why isn't she sleeping? And 2, where the hell did she get a steel knitting needle from? She only had plastic ones earlier, and she gave one of them to Amy, and surely if she wanted to protect Amy so much, she'd have given her one of her steel ones, right? No. Anyway, where did she get it from? We don't know. It is never, ever explained. It's just here. None of this makes sense. Damon Sawyer is gonna kill all of you, she screams at her audience. He'll do it. He'll kill every single one of you. Like, let's be real here, right? If he wanted to kill everyone, he could have done it by now, right? He's had plenty of opportunities, so what's he waiting for? This is another massive gaping plot hole in this book. I hate this, right? This idea that if a person is mentally ill, then they just mindlessly want to kill everyone for no good reason. It is such a harmful idea. Dr. Beck and Ramona, I'm now putting both of them in quotation marks, manhandle Mary back into her room, and then Amy is like, Jade and Will are quite familiar with each other. I think back to what I read in Jade's chart. She was going from bank to bank robbing them with a beer bottle, but she wasn't alone. According to the chart, she went on a crime spree with her boyfriend, who presumably came to the hospital at the exact same time she did. Who says that? Why would he come to the same room as... Like, if he wasn't mentally ill, why would he come to the same hospital? And there was nothing in the chart to suggest that he was mentally ill. So you're just making stuff up. The same night, Will was admitted to the emergency room. Oh my god. Will is Jade's boyfriend. What a stupid reveal. Good job it's not true. I did say in my script, I'll give you this. I did not see this coming. But that's because it's stupid. Wasn't Jade telling Amy to go hit on Will earlier, and he's got a crap ton of books with him? Do you want me to believe that this man was having hallucinations and paranoia, so him and his girlfriend, his bipolar girlfriend, decided to rob a bank? They both get caught and arrested, and instead of going to jail, they let him stop by his house, pack up a few books, and then cart both of them off to a non-secure but poorly run public psychiatric ward. Stop it. This would not happen. But Amy has no brain cells and can't think of this for herself, so she just believes it. It must be true. Back in the flashback, and 8 years ago, Jade and Amy are in a car. Jade is driving too fast. Amy is drinking peach iced tea again. Jade takes her to a house. I step through some wayward grass that has grown into the pathway to the back door. I climb the 3 steps and pass through the entrance to the kitchen, and that's when I realise whose house it is. My mouth falls open. The peached iced tea I've been holding in my right hand drops to the floor, spilling brown liquid all over the grimy kitchen tiles, intermingling with the droplets of crimson. I realise at that moment I will never be able to drink peach iced tea ever again, that I will become ill at the very thought of it. End of chapter. R.I.P. iced tea. No more peach-fueled hallucinations for you, Ames. Also, I really hate how Frieda McFadden writes in these short, incomplete sentences. If you take these out of context, they don't make sense. That I will become very ill at the very thought of it is not a complete sentence. It's just grammatically incorrect. And there's a lot of instances of this throughout the book. We don't find out whose house it is at this point. Instead, we flip back to the present day, leave us on a classic Freda cliffhanger. Dr. Beck, quotation marks, Dr. Beck, leaves Mary's room and says, she's finally calm, thank God. I don't think she'll give us more trouble for the rest of the night, but starting tomorrow, she should be on a higher dose of Seroquel at bedtime. We don't need another episode like that. So here I'm thinking, if he's not actually a doctor, how does he know about medications? But a quick Google search tells me that this is a type of antipsychotic medication, and while it is sometimes given to patients with dementia when they're sundowning like Mary apparently is, this and other types of this particular medication come with a really high risk of causing strokes and death in elderly people, like for example an 80-year-old woman. So I'm no medical expert, but it seems to me that a doctor wouldn't be so casual about this decision to up the dose of a potentially life-threatening drug to an 80-year-old. But what do I know? I'm not Frieda McFadden. But again, to me this was like, okay, he's not a real doctor. He's just... we'll just up a dose, Yeah, anyway. Even Ramona doesn't know how Mary got the metal knitting needle, and it's not explained other than Ramona saying, oh, she's resourceful. Of course she got it. And that's it. That's the only explanation we get in this entire book for where she got metal knitting needles from. It's never explained. Ramona then confirms that Jade and Will are indeed a couple, and I'm like, surely this would have been in their charts, no? And Amy read their charts, so she would know, but it didn't say it in there, so none of this makes sense. Amy goes up to Jade and is like, I know everything. And maybe you should be careful around Will, I say. People who hear voices, you can't trust people like that. Lovely, more stigma. And also just internalized ableism. I think Will might be extremely dangerous, I say. I think we all might be in danger tonight, but if you don't want to listen, that's up to you. Finally, we get another countdown check-in, and it's now 3 hours to morning, so it's like 4 a.m. or something, I think. Amy goes to see Ramona and says, do you think Mary's alright? Asks Ramona. She's back to her magazine at the nurse's station, flipping through the pages. There's a full-page photograph of a very handsome 20-something man on the page she's looking at. It's a tribute to how much time I've spent studying in the last 2 years that I have absolutely no idea who this famous heartthrob is. And see, a real nurse wouldn't have time for this. I call fake. I hover over her. And then, speaking about Mary, if we gave her a bunch of Ativan, shouldn't we be checking on her? Ativan is a sedative. I remember from pharmacology class that it can cause respiratory depression, meaning it can cause a person to stop breathing, especially in the elderly. It was on the flashcard. For all we know, Mary has stopped breathing in there.
And this is the first and only time in the book that Amy displays any medical knowledge at all. And it only happens 69% of the way in and never again. See, she didn't need to be a doctor in this story or a medical student. She just didn't. Amy goes against Ramona's wishes and checks on Mary despite being told not to, only to find, oh my god, another shock, another twist, her bed is empty. Oh my god, where is Mary? And then we get nearly the exact same ominous chapter ending as we did earlier. My heart is pounding as I come out of the bathroom, but not as much as it is when I realise there's a silhouette in the doorway of Mary's room. A man is standing there waiting for me to emerge from the bathroom, and when I do, he shuts the door, closing us both inside. It's Will. Obviously, Amy thinks that Will must have done something to Mary, and she's like, I know everything. And then Will reveals, I'm not crazy. He lays his hand on his heart. I swear on my life that Jade is not my girlfriend. I hardly even know her. I assure you, he says, that never happened. Jade is... she's somebody to stay away from. So that's what I've been doing. I don't even know her last name, I swear. And then, oh my god, super shocking reveal. Will not only isn't dating Jade, who saw that coming, but Will isn't even schizophrenic. I lied, okay? He scratches at his stubble. I read a bunch of stuff about how a paranoid schizophrenic is supposed to act, and then I went to the emergency room and read the script, and they put me here. I stare at him. Why on earth would you do something like that? Are you out of your mind? No, I'm not. That's the whole point. He drops his voice so I have to strain to hear. So here's the thing. I'm not an Uber driver. I'm a reporter. This former patient of Ward D came to me with this story about how he felt patients were mistreated here. But you know, it's hard to get a straight story out of a lot of patients here, and I didn't want to print a bunch of patient hallucinations, so I thought the best way to get my story would be to experience it firsthand. More stigma there. I like this idea that like you can't be a reliable source if you've had a mental illness is just ugh. I open my mouth and don't even know what to say. He lied about being a paranoid schizophrenic. That's pretty... I don't even have words for it. In a few days I was planning to say the voices went away, he says, like I took some illegal drug and that triggered it, and now I'm fine. That was my plan anyway, but it's not working out like I thought it would. You know, interestingly enough, and I'll give Frieda McFadden this, a study like this was actually done for real. So I read a book about it a few years back called The Great Pretender by Susan Callahan. And it was a really, really good book. It's, like I said, a while since I've read it, a few years, but it was really, really good, and it's one that stuck with me. The fake patients were actually psychology students who were instructed by their professor to do this, and they all faked symptoms, and all but one of them were diagnosed with schizophrenia and admitted onto psychiatric wards. It turns out that it was incredibly difficult for them afterwards to prove their sanity and be allowed to leave the ward. And it showed a lot about how there's a massive overdiagnosis of schizophrenia, how a lot of the criteria for it is really, really flawed. It showed how, you know, we stigmatize people that we think have mental illnesses, and we read into their behavior even when they don't actually have an illness. As long as we think they do, we treat them differently and we treat them poorly. And it was an experiment done in the 70s, but it was incredibly insightful, and it told us a lot about how we judge and stigmatize people. Like I say, that we presume to be mentally ill regardless of whether they actually are or not. And while it's an older experiment, I think it's something that's still very, very, very relevant today. And this is what is happening in Freda's book. I feel like Freda read that book and thought, yeah, I can use this idea, but didn't understand that the problems it highlighted are actually problems, and just thought, oh, I'll make a book about judging mentally ill people because I too judge mentally ill people, and yay, judgment. At least that's how it comes across. I just finished reading a book called The Great Pretender, which was fantastic. It is by Susanna Callahan. This woman. And like I say, absolutely fantastic book. One of my favourites I've read in a long time, actually. And yeah, I cannot recommend it enough. It looks in depth at a study done by Rosenhan in the 70s, in which, to give you the summary from the book, 8 sane, normal, well-adjusted members of society went undercover into asylums around America to test the legitimacy of psychiatry's labels. Forced to remain inside until they'd proven themselves sane, all 8 emerged with alarming diagnoses and even more troubling stories of their treatment. Now, not only does the book examine that particular experiment and reveal some pretty big flaws in it, but also the consequences of it and how it changed our approach to psychiatry in general. But it also really made me
re-examine my own approach to mental health issues. You know, mental health is something that I'm very kind of passionate about talking about, and it's something that's very close to my heart and is something that I really care about. And it really made me look at these idea of the labels we put on people, like what really is a mental illness? How is that any different from a physical illness? Is it different at all? What do labels like sane or insane, normal or mad, well or unwell, what do they even mean? Are they even relevant? The idea of sanity and insanity, is there a distinct line between them, or is it more of a spectrum? Are we all a little mad? It also highlighted to me how little we actually know about the physiological causes of so many of the mental illnesses that we diagnose. You know, never mind how to treat them. Often, when it comes to treatment, we're treating the symptoms, not the cause. So it's not really any wonder that most people don't get better. They just end up kind of subdued, you know? If we don't really know what's wrong with someone like Hambrick, how do we really know how to treat him? We're just throwing generic treatments at him and hoping they work. Is it any wonder that they didn't?
Anyway, Will is the only sensible person in this book, as he points out how messed up this whole ward is. He says, even before tonight, I had some issues to write about. He looks back at the door to Mary's room, still shut tight. The seclusion rooms here, I don't know how ethical any of that is. They should at least have windows on the doors so staff can check on them regularly. I didn't see it happen, but you should have heard that Damon Sawyer guy screaming his head off when they locked him in there. And Miguel was screaming to get out too, at least until... And that's where he just, cuts off talking. And again, these, ethical violations and stuff. Why didn't Amy, the trainee doctor, also pick up on this? I don't know. Amy decides to try and trust Will, and ends the chapter with, so suppose I do decide to believe you, I say. What do we do about it? Here's what we need to do. The whites of his eyes glow in the moonlight. We survive the night. That's not a plan, Will. That's an end goal. Learn the difference. If you have an exam coming up and someone asks you what your revision plan is, you don't say, so, I have an exam. Here's what I need to do. Pass the exam. It doesn't make sense. That's not a plan. That's not a plan. Will says that he did actually try taking the medications, and he says, I didn't have a choice. I tried taking the medications, for authenticity, but I couldn't think straight on them. And then Amy chimes in her narration. Jade always complained about how hard it was to be on antipsychotic medications. Not that I thought she was making it up, but I'm beginning to realise what she's gone through over the last 8 years. How hard her life was because of her illness. Although I'm still baffled as to why she would make up a lie about Will being her boyfriend. I'm sorry, but it took a healthy man taking medication he didn't need for you to understand why your ill friend was struggling. None of this book makes sense. And I'm sorry, but you can't use an ill man taking medication he didn't need as a reason for why you think all antipsychotic medications are bad and detrimental to people. It just... hate this book. Amy and Will bond some more because Freda really wants to make them a thing. I always love to read too. I flipped through his dog-eared copy of Owen Meany. Whenever we were assigned to read a book in school, I would always finish it after 2 days, even when we were only assigned to read 2 chapters. That just makes you a nerd, he says. I, on the other hand, was a reading renegade. In class, while the teacher was teaching a lesson, I would be reading a book under my desk. I actually got detention for reading. My teacher was always saying, Will, put that book away. Despite everything, I had to giggle. You're right. I was never a reading renegade. Will's theory is, I think he, meaning Damon Sawyer, must have gotten out. He should have. When the power died, the locks must have turned off as well, and he took advantage. I clasp a hand over my mouth. You think so? But this makes no sense. Patience said he was going to kill them before the power went out, and the power apparently reset the passcode of the front door so no one could leave, right? It didn't open the door, or we don't know it opened the door, so why would it work differently for the seclusion room? I don't know. None of this makes any sense. Also, if this entire ward is staffed by just 2 people and 2 trainees, then it can't be that big, so where's he supposed to be hiding? It's not even convincing. I'm still going with my theory that, and I'm going with my theory that Dr. Beck is Damon, Ramona is someone helping him, and I'm adding in now, Damon is also Jade's boyfriend, and they're in this together. That was my theory. I'm smarter than Frieda McFadden. Flashback again, and this is where I think, God, I'm just going to say this now. It's so nice to actually be recording this and have a distraction. Like, this is the first time I've laughed in days, and I think I needed this. So, as exhausted as I am, as stressed as I am, yeah, this is actually really nice. Okay, flashback again, and this is where things get absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. So Amy has spilled her peach iced tea on the floor of this house because Jade has kidnapped and tied up their maths teacher. That's where this is going. I did not see this coming. I thought this was going to be some exam cheating scandal, and then, I don't know, Amy tells on Jade and some things. No. Jade has kidnapped a man. How does Freda's brain work? I can't rip my eyes away from the man duct taped to a chair in the middle of this tiny kitchen. His hands and legs are bound with the dull grey tape, and there's a piece holding his mouth closed. His face is dripping with sweat, and one of his eyes is swollen closed. There's blood on his scalp intermingled with the sparse strands of hair combed over his bald spot. Because remember, kids, all mentally ill people are evil and want to harm people, right? Jade's just supposed to have bipolar, a completely normal illness that many, 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 many people live with and manage. But Freda's decided that this means Jade lacks all empathy for any other human and wants to harm everyone she sees for no reason. This is not a normal part of bipolar at all. The average person with bipolar does not go around kidnapping their maths teacher. I can't believe I even have to say that. She smiles pleasantly like there isn't a bloody man tied up 2 feet away from us. I just told him if he didn't want to do what I said, I was going to stab him in the eye. He was really cooperative after that. Right, she bobs her head. Except we're not going to let him go. We're going to kill him. Again, this is not how the average person with bipolar acts, and it is completely harmful to portray it this way. Don't think I don't know, she hisses in my ear. I know about that little girl you keep seeing everywhere. You're always talking about it. Did you see her, Jade? Nobody sees her, Amy. Nobody but you. I open my mouth, but all that comes out is a squeak. There's no little girl, Amy, she says. You think you're so superior, but it turns out you're even crazier than I am, and if you don't help me, I'm going to tell everyone. And I have no words for any of this. Why would a doctor actually think this is something she should write and put out into the world? Like, I don't even know what to say about this book anymore. Like I said earlier, people told me this book was bad, but I did not expect it to be this bad. At this point, Amy starts hallucinating the little girl again, and the little girl starts saying, like, she should kill her maths teacher with Jade. And then the chapter ends on a cliffhanger, which the next chapter just immediately resolves, like, essentially off page. Like, well, kind of. Present day, hours until morning 2. I didn't do it. I didn't kill my trigonometry teacher. Obviously. I didn't let Jade do it either. When she tried to hand me that carving knife, I ran out of Mr. Riordan's house and out onto the main road. I hitched a ride back to my own house, found my mother, and burst into tears as I told her everything. So great way to remove all tension or excitement in what is supposed to be a climactic moment in your story. Forget showing us the action, just be like, well, yeah, obviously that didn't happen. And then basically moved on. Well, not everything. I didn't tell her about the little blonde girl, but the little girl disappeared soon after that, and I never saw her again. I never saw anything that wasn't really there ever again. See, it was peach-induced hallucinations. It's the only explanation. That's what I wrote in my original script, and you would laugh at how accurate it is. Also, no, I'll talk about this later. Just remember this line. Remember this line. We will come back to it. After my mother called the police, thankfully in time to save Mr. Riordan, Jade had a psychiatric evaluation and received her bipolar diagnosis. It was what saved her from kidnapping and attempted murder charges. The next time I saw her, she was right here on Ward D. She was pumped up with lithium, lying in a messy hospital bed, staring up at the ceiling vacantly. Like, I'm sorry, but she wouldn't just get away with this completely, surely. If she was found to have what's known as diminished responsibilities because of mental health problems, this doesn't mean that charges against her, especially for something as serious as kidnapping, would just automatically be dropped. She'd still likely have to serve out a sentence, and probably a fairly long one, but usually in some sort of secure criminal psychiatric facility. Again, not some random ward in a normal hospital just open to the public. this is so full of plot holes, it's ridiculous. And again, I don't think just bipolar is enough to just get away with a bunch of crime. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. At the time, Jade threatened to kill Amy if she ever came back to Ward D, and so in my script I was like, this is clearly what's happening tonight, right? And so in my script I was like, that's clearly what's happening tonight, right? She's heard Amy's coming back to the ward, so she's like, well, I told her not to come back, and now she's come back, so I'm gonna kill her. Yeah. And I'm like, clearly she's behind all of this. Amy narrates, I haven't had much time for fun over the last 2 years. It's been mostly studying the Krebs cycle, lots of pharmacology flashcards, and the intricate details of the celiac plexus. And of course, occasionally hooking up with Cam, blah, blah, blah. Again, this is like meant to give us an insight into Amy as a third-year med student. But the things she's describing she does are quite basic for someone at her stage of her apparent career, right? Like the details of the Krebs cycle, that's one of the most basic things, right? You'll be introduced to the Krebs cycle like at GCSE biology, and you'll kind of like learn of it, and then you do it in a bit more detail at A-level. And then we covered the Krebs cycle in like great detail in my first term of my first year of biomedical science. So you're telling me that like what I learned at 18 years old is what Amy is only just learning in her like second and third year of medical school? Because I'm sorry, but I don't believe that. No. I know Freda's meant to be apparently a doctor, but it feels like at this point she just Googled biology-related words and then stuck them in there at random, you know? At this point, Jade appears again and takes Amy away from Will, and Amy says to Jade, he did tell me the two of you aren't really dating, though. Jade's eyelashes flutter. He said that? Seriously? Yes. Jade reaches out and takes my hand in hers. Will and I have been dating for 3 years, I swear it. I don't understand why he would say something like that. Well, I do understand it, actually. He's always been a compulsive liar. What other nonsense did he tell you? I open my mouth, but I'm not sure what to say. Will told me a lot of things, but none of them felt like lies. He loves to make up jobs for himself to seem more important, Jade says, like he's a pilot or a teacher or a reporter, even though all he's done since we've been dating is occasionally drive an Uber, and most of the time he doesn't even do that. His parents have been giving him money to keep him afloat, or else he'd end up on the street. Now, there's having unreliable narrators and characters in books. I love that. I think it can make for an absolutely fantastic book. I think thrillers like The Girl on the Train did it quite well. I think kind of more classic books like John Fowles The Collector does it quite well. Well, it does it really, really well. There's loads and loads of examples of unreliable narrators being really good. Throwing the audience off, a really great thing in thrillers. Making the audience unsure who to trust or whatever. Like, great. But Freda doesn't have unreliable narrators. What she has in this book is just having characters outright lie to the face of other characters with no indication of what's actually real and what isn't. And also having her narrator straight up lie to the audience. And this was the thing I was going to bring up earlier. There's a couple of lines in this where Amy as narrator straight up lies to the audience, just a flat out lie, but there's no indication that it's a lie. She just flat out lies for no reason, and then later she's like, oh yeah, actually the opposite. Like, and that's meant to be a twist. You can't just lie to your audience and then decide to tell the truth for no reason, and you lie for no reason, then tell the truth for no reason, and then be like, see, it's a twist. Like, hate this book. All that said, we have to remember this is a Frieda McFadden book. And there is no way that Freda is ever going to make a woman more trustworthy than a hot man, especially a mentally ill woman. They're not going to make her more trustworthy than a hot man. So we have to assume that Will is the one telling the truth. That, and also because, you know, the timeline of him having books, if he really were Jade's boyfriend, that wouldn't make sense. So we have to assume that he's the one telling the truth. But again, even if his story is right and he went to the emergency room and said, I'm hearing voices, like, do you really think he'd have time to pack up like 12 books or whatever? Weird. Anyway. Also, we have to remember this is Frieda McFadden and she stigmatizes mental health issues. So, of course she's going to do the whole sane person good, mentally ill person bad and a liar thing, right? Will good because he's not actually mentally ill. Jade bad because she is mentally ill. Anyway, Jade is now teaming up with Ramona, Ramona, to now convince Amy that she's crazy, and in doing so they take her to Mary's room, which is now strangely covered in blood. Oh my god, there's blood all over the bed. I didn't even see it when the lights were off. I cover my mouth with both hands. I think I might be sick. I lean forward and gag a bit. It's a good thing I didn't manage to eat lunch. It's a good thing I didn't manage to eat much for dinner. Again, sorry, you're a third-year med student and you want me to believe you vomit at the sight of blood. Like, make it make sense. Where is she? I gasp. She's lying down in a clean, empty room, Ramona says. She'll be all right, thank goodness, but she told us Will attacked her with a weapon. And where is he supposed to have got a weapon from, I don't believe it for a second, but Amy eats it all up because she's stupid. Because, like, think about it. If Will did it, why isn't he covered in blood? Why didn't the nurses stop him or restrain him or call for help or put him in seclusion or something? Why is he just wandering around? Like, Amy is so dumb. Throughout this book, it's hard to know what is a genuine plot hole and what is just Amy being dumb or Frieda McFadden being dumb. This book is such a mess. 5 minutes ago, I trusted Will. I trusted him even though I hardly knew him, and now I realise he has tricked me. All along, he had me just where he wanted me. I wipe my lips with the back of my hand. What do you need me to do? Amy is so stupid, she literally just goes along with whatever the last person she spoke to says to her, and she just blindly believes them. So she goes back to Will's room, where we get more lines similar to the ones from earlier. The diagnosis in his chart is paranoid schizophrenia, but he claimed it was a lie. Everything he's done or said since we've been here has been incredibly paranoid. He's created an entire conspiracy theory, when in fact, he's the most suspicious person of all. The supposed Dr. Beck and Ramona turn up with a mysterious mystery syringe to sedate him, and they grab him and get Amy to inject him, perhaps because she's the only one with actual medical training who knows how to use the syringe. Who's to say? Us, we are to say. It's true. Amy says it would be easy enough to do. A syringe is sticking out of Ramona's scrub pants. All I would have to do is jab him in his upper arm. 2 people are holding him down, so it shouldn't be that hard to do. Except, then I hear a snicker from behind me. I rotate my head, and that's when I notice Jade standing just outside the door. Her hands are folded across her chest, and she has a smirk on her lips. I've known Jade for a long time, and I know that look. That's when it hits me. She's not afraid of Will at all. She was lying to me. She was lying to Ramona and Dr. Beck. She's enjoying this. Literally, Amy has changed her mind like 5 times in 5 pages. She is so fickle. She is one of the most annoying narrators and apparent protagonists that I've ever read. Oh, for God's sake, Ramona grumbles. She throws the weight of her knee onto Will's arm and then grabs a syringe with her left hand. She pulls off the cap with her teeth, then plunges the needle into Will's deltoid. Also, not something I could ever see a nurse doing, the using her teeth thing. Like, to me, I'm like, see, she's not a real nurse, I'm telling you. That's what I wrote in my original script. Turns out, and I'm going to give you a little spoiler now, we were right not to trust Ramona, but she is actually a real nurse. She's apparently a real trained nurse, and yet she's still doing this, so I've doomed Will. And the worst part is that now there is absolutely nobody left I can trust. I really don't understand what any of their end game is here. Their whole plan is so damn stupid. In the next chapter, Dr. Beck tries to convince Amy that she's also crazy. Dr. Beck considered my question for a moment. His eyes cloud over as he looks at Will's closed door, then back at my face. Amy, he says quietly, have you ever heard of a psychiatric syndrome called folie à deux? I always pronounce that wrong, so please excuse me. I cannot do French accents. No. You're a doctor. How do you not know this? Anyway. It's also called a shared psychotic disorder, he says. Basically, it's a delusional beliefs, sometimes even involving hallucinations, that are shared by 2 people. For example, if a married couple both believe their dog could speak English. That's not a delusion, that's just fact. I'm joking. Will has unfortunately managed to convince you that certain delusions of his were true, Dr. Beck says. But if you think about it, you will realise nothing he believed was rational. He was using these delusions to justify insignificant events and ultimately his own violent behaviour. Again, a real doctor would not be just thrown around diagnoses like this. That's not how doctors work. I'm afraid Will's psychosis is much worse than what my colleague from the day shift reported to me, he says. He really should be transferred to a more secure facility, perhaps even a criminal facility given our suspicions about what he did to Mary Cummings. So in this world, in this book, criminal facilities do exist. So why haven't the actual criminals been sent there? Like Jade and Damon? It makes no sense. Also, you can't just decide to send someone to a criminal facility for fun. Like, surely they have to go through the courts, yeah? You can't just be like, well, we suspect he did a thing, so we're going to send him there and treat him like it doesn't work. Amy decides there's nothing left to do but go and read Damon Sawyer's file, which mysteriously disappeared earlier, but now has mysteriously reappeared, and yeah, okay, now we get another twist. Oh my god. Blah blah blah, there's charts, he's got a note from his intake. It was written the night he came in and details the events that led to his incarceration here, as well as his mental health history. As I start reading, a sick feeling comes over me. Oh my god. I wish I'd read this from the beginning. This changes absolutely everything. End of chapter. Cliffhanger. Next chapter. It's all resolved. Damon Sawyer is a 32-year-old man with a history of schizoaffective disorder. Schizoaffective disorder is a combination of schizophrenia and a mood disorder, in this case bipolar. In Sawyer's case, he had symptoms of schizophrenia including hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking, but also mania. I've never seen such an extensive psychiatric history. There was never anything like this in the charts for Dr. Sleepy's patients. That's the doctor, or the nickname she uses for the one she works for during the day. So at this point in my notes I was like, 32 you say? Like a certain Dr. Beck? What? Yeah. Unfortunately, Amy still does not put this together. Damon Sawyer's family history is unremarkable. His father is a businessman and his mother is a homemaker. There was no abuse or neglect recorded to explain the fact that at a young age, Sawyer was diagnosed with something called conduct disorder. Even though I have no internet access, I have several medical apps on my phone that don't require the internet. I check the psychiatry app, which informs me that conduct disorder is a mental disorder diagnosed in childhood or adolescence, presenting with a persistent pattern of theft, lies, and physical violence, a classic antisocial behaviour pattern. In Sawyer's case, he really liked setting fires. Sawyer was hospitalized on and off for several years, starting at age 10, after a variety of physical alterations and charges of arson. Finally, at age 15, he set a fire that resulted in 2 casualties. He claimed voices in his head told him to do it, and as a result, he was committed to a psychiatric facility for the next 4 years. During his time at the psychiatric facility, he received his diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder in addition to conduct disorder. You would think after someone sets a fire that kills 2 people, they would be locked up for good, but he was released at age 19 after supposedly being stabilized on medication. In his 20s, Sawyer struggled with substance abuse. After Jade's mother's overdose, I learned how common it is for people with mental illness to also struggle with addiction. Sawyer bounced between prison and psychiatric hospitals as he was picked up multiple times on charges of possession and dealing, but on the plus side, he didn't set any more fires. So she really does want to pile on this idea that some people are just born evil and messed up and can't ever be helped narrative that she's pushing. You know, oh, we had this perfect childhood, but because he's got a mental illness, he's just evil and does evil things. And like, I thought we were past this type of demonization when this book was written, but apparently not. The note goes on to mention that Sawyer had been convicted of assault and even an attempted manslaughter charge, but due to his extensive psychiatric history, these sentences were commuted into psychiatric hospital stays. But clearly, this is a very dangerous man. In the emergency room, he had to be restrained by 4 staff members, although he eventually calmed down enough with medication that they thought he would be appropriate for Ward D. They were wrong. Sawyer was with his girlfriend. The 2 of them were drinking beer together, and they decided it would be hilarious to go and rob a bunch of banks using their beer bottles. So they went all over town demanding money from bank clerks while pointing their beer bottles at them. Jade does have a boyfriend, but her boyfriend isn't Will Schoenfeld, who was never hearing voices at all and just went too far to achieve his dream to be a reporter for the New York Times. No. Jade's boyfriend is Damon Sawyer. I'd say I told you so, but we all saw it coming anyway, so yeah. Now we just need to wait for the reveal that Dr. Beck is Damon. The only thing I don't know is who Ramona is exactly, but at this point I was like, I'm sure we'll find out. Now, having read the book, I still don't really understand who she is or where she came from. I mean, we get told, but you'll see, it's stupid. And I'm also just really confused why this, like, relationship disclosure was in Damon's chart but not Jade's. That just feels like a plot hole. Also, again, if he's done this much criminal activity and there's all this stuff, like, why is he not... A, he'd probably be in a jail cell right now. And B, if he was going to, like, a criminal unit, he'd be in a criminal unit. It makes no sense. This is so stupid. Amy decides she needs to go and shake Will awake because she needs his help. The same man that she just literally saw sedated with, like, a whole syringe of drugs. Mystery drugs. She's a trainee doctor, and she doesn't realise that you can't just shake someone awake after a medical sedation. Yet she tries anyway. And then, because she's so dumb, there's only one thing left I can possibly do. I have to tell Dr. Beck what's going on. I'm fairly sure he's going to think I've lost my mind, and who knows how it will impact my medical school career. I mean, he already thinks I have that folie à deux thingy going on, but at the same time, he's the boss here. If I tell him what Jade is up to and can be convincing enough, he can help me. It's my only chance. Stupid idea. He's Damon. You can't trust him. Also, she's a third-year med student saying, that folie à deux thingy. Are you serious? Anyway, she goes to talk to him, and they discuss the door code not working, and Dr. Beck wants to find Ramona, and Amy's like, no, because she thinks she can't trust Ramona, and then she almost faints, so she just sits and waits while Dr. Beck wanders off to get help, and does nothing. I lean my head back against the sofa and close my eyes. The dizziness seems to be subsiding, but I still feel uneasy. A crazy man is wandering the unit, and Jade? I don't quite understand her part in this, but she's held a grudge against me since high school. Jade will never forgive me. I did what I had to. It wasn't like I had a choice in the matter. I couldn't let her kill our trigonometry teacher, but she could never see it that way. I'm sorry. The whole premise of this book is that your ex-best friend has a grudge against you because you wouldn't let her kill your teacher. This is the stupidest motivation in any book I've ever read. Even Kyra agrees. Where is Dr. Beck? Shouldn't he be back by now? The unit only takes like 60 seconds to walk around. Told you so. It's a small stupid. How long has it been since he disappeared out the door? Did Jade and Ramona do something to him? Is that why he isn't back yet? I reach into my pocket to grab my phone to check the time. God, how did it get so late? But the night is almost over. One way or another, I'm getting out of here. She's just really dumb. Then, as I predicted like 60% of the book ago, Amy's phone finally gets miracle signal, and I click on the text message from Gabby, which came hours ago, shortly after I texted her that I'd arrived at Ward D, and that Dr. Beck was cute. God, my priorities were different back then. Her text message fills the screen. You think Dr. Beck is cute? You perv. Dr. Beck is like 80 years old. I stare at the text message on the screen. My heart is pounding out of my chest. Dr. Beck is like 80 years old? So according to Gabby, who spent a week working with him, Dr. Beck is an old man. And if the attending physician on this unit is an old man, then who the hell was just with me in this room? Don't you just love it when an author over-explains everything? It's my big main critique of Janice Hallett, who I love her books. They are wonderful modern-day epistolary novels, and the stories and the twists and the crime drama, it's so fantastic. I love them. I love the stories in her book. But I hate how she has these passages of over-explain everything we've just read. Like she thinks her audience is dumber than we are. It frustrates me a bit, but I can still forgive it because the rest of her books are so well written and her characters are so three-dimensional and her stories are so good I can forgive it. Frieda McFadden does not have that going for her, so I cannot forgive it. This is the most predictable apparent twist from her that I've seen yet. The next chapter is literally just a recap of the entire book that we've read so far. When Cameron and I first arrived at Ward D, a man in his 30s wearing scrubs and a white coat introduced himself as Dr. Richard Beck, which was also embroidered on his coat. He wasn't wearing an ID badge, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. There was no reason to think that he was anyone other than Dr. Beck, and it was confirmed to me by the nurse, Ramona. Dr. Beck is like 80 years old. Gabby had no reason to lie. It's very clear now that the man I'd been addressing as the attending psychiatrist on the unit is not Dr. Beck. And then, of course, there's the question of where the real Dr. Beck is, because he was the assigned psychiatrist on the call schedule. So at some point, was he ever here? And then blah, 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 it goes on like this. Like, we know all this because we literally just read the book. Freda really thinks her audience is stupid. Amy thinks her way out of here is to blow another fuse and cut the power, so she takes a mug of water and throws it at the light switch. Very sensible. You know, risk starting an electrical fire while you're entirely locked in an area with no way of getting out and no way of contacting anyone outside. Yep, that's smart. But apparently it works. So, oh god, I didn't even mention this before. When the power went out before, it's because a patient peed on a light switch. That apparently was enough to, like, cut all the power on the ward and open the door and reset codes and do all this stuff, like peeing on a light switch. Ridiculous. So now she gets a cup of water, throws it on the light switch, and apparently it works and the door opens, but instead of getting out of there, she decides to stall because if I ever had a chance, this is it. I grab my phone out of my pocket and turn on the flashlight function. I shine it around the room until I locate the door, and then I make a run for it. The door to the unit is directly on my left. All I have to do is grab the handle and get the hell out of here, but before I can do it, I find myself hesitating. I find my eyes drawn in the direction of the seclusion rooms, notably to seclusion 1. Don't you want to see what's inside? I shine my flashlight in the direction of seclusion 1. The keypad that usually glows green has gone dark. Is this when Damon Sawyer escaped? Or is he still in the room, ready to pounce when I open the door? Like, are you serious? One, how has she not put it together yet that this Dr. Beck is Damon Sawyer? How has she not realised she's so dumb? And two, you have the chance to escape, go and get help. Why are you hanging around? This is so stupid. This is so damn stupid. And then a terrible thought hits me. When anyone leaves the unit, the door alarm sounds off. It's like a siren. You can hear it everywhere. And I haven't heard that sound once since I first entered Ward D. Cameron supposedly had a family emergency and left the unit, but if that were true, we would have heard that deafening siren noise emit from the door, which means Cameron never left. If he'd gone through that door, I would have heard the siren, so that means he might still be here. Since I've searched everywhere else, that leaves one remaining place where he could be. And if he is in there, if Damon Sawyer somehow grabbed him and pulled him inside, I owe it to Cameron to try and rescue him before it's too late. So finally, it took her 7 hours to figure that out. She is an idiot. Plus, why does she need to keep repeating the same thing over and over? And no, you don't owe it to him to get him out. You owe it to him to get out of that ward, get safe, get help, call the police, send in trained professionals, stop being dumb. As I stare inside the room, my legs tremble beneath me. Oh no. Oh my god. I should have never opened the door to this room. I should have made a run for it while I still could. Yeah, we told you this. Also, the amount of time she says, oh my god, or oh god, or whatever, or just straight up panics instead of doing anything and using her brain. It's so repetitive and frustrating, it's quite boring to read. It's repeated so much it loses all meaning and does not create the tension that Freda thinks it does. You know what I haven't done in this book is a word count. You know, like when an author swears too much, I do a swear count. Let's do one for oh my god. Oh, there are 27 oh my gods, 5 oh gods, and 8 oh no's. Yeah, the stench of blood fills seclusion 1. A couple of my friends are taking their surgery rotation right now, and when they discuss the surgeries they saw, they never mention the smell of blood, but this room is thick with it. An acrid metallic smell that assaults my nostrils as I stare into the small dark space. There's death in this room. Again, sorry, you want me to believe that a third-year med student isn't used to being around blood because she hasn't done her surgery rotation yet? Like, come on. Inside the room, she finds Mary. She's dead. Cameron. He's dead. Another woman who is clearly the real Nurse Ramona. She's dead. And an old man, clearly the real Dr. Beck. And he is, you guessed it, dead. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 dead bodies in here. Standard, yep, lovely. Damon turns up and reveals that he's Damon, because of course he is, we all knew this. Fake Dr. Beck is Damon. Amy was too stupid to figure this out for herself and he had to tell her. She's so stupid. She's so stupid. I don't know who you are, but I know you're not Dr. Beck. You're right. I haven't even introduced myself. He smiles at me and those dimples pop. He really is handsome. I can see why Jade fell for him. My name is Damon. Damon Sawyer. And it's very nice to finally meet you, Amy. I've heard so much about you. Oh wow, what a surprise. I'm shocked. Are you shocked? None of us saw this coming. All this time, I thought the monster was in seclusion 1. I thought he was roaming the halls, hiding in dark corners, but all along, he was right in front of me. Footsteps echo down the hallway, growing closer. Bile rises in my throat when Jade and Ramona round the corner. Now it's 3 against 1. Not that I had any chance against Damon Sawyer, even on his own. Jade gloats. You disappointed me though, Amy, she muses. I always thought of you as being very smart, but you never saw any of this coming. You believed me over that geeky reporter, even though you know I'm a brilliant liar. She looks over at her boyfriend with admiration. And worst of all, you trusted him. Like, are you serious? You thought Amy was smart? Were you spending time with the same person we just read about? Because nothing in this book implied she was in any way, at any time, smart. Jade info dumps and tries to fill in all the plot holes. Damon apparently could pretend to be a doctor because you did put on an excellent performance, she concedes. I guess those psychology books you were always reading paid off. Sure thing, sure. Also, it's funny that, like, this random criminal who just reads psychology books for fun apparently has more medical knowledge than Amy, who's a third-year med student. It's revealed that Damon was Jade's mum's drug dealer, and that's how they met. And he fell for Jade, and then together they plotted to kill her mum via giving her a drug overdose. Freda's just making them comically evil at this point. There's more info dumping. It was surprisingly easy, Jade says. The real Dr. Beck wasn't working on the unit until this week, so most of the patients had never seen him before. Damon jerks his head in the direction of the room filled with dead bodies, and we managed to take care of most of the people who did recognize me. My eyes were drawn to the woman that I believed was Ramona all night. She's looking down at her nails critically, but when she notices my attention, she looks up and smiles. My name is Nicole, she says. I actually am a nurse. Before you went berserk, Jade points out. Ramona, who's actually Nicole, shoots her a look. You asked for my help and you got it. Nicole, that was the name of the patient Mary had mixed me up with. I remember Mary saying something about how Dr. Beck wouldn't let her leave. Don't pretend you were doing us a favour, Jade snaps at Nicole. Your brother was trying to have you committed, and we did you a big favour letting you in on our plan. How about a little gratitude, huh? So then Jade and Nicole have a spat because reasons, and because two women can't possibly actually be friends in a Freda book. So Damon just kills Nicole, / previous Ramona, by smashing her head in with a paperweight, which he's just been carrying around in his pocket for some reason. None of this makes sense. And again, the demonization. Nicole is apparently like a successful nurse until one day she gets mentally ill and snaps and decides to go on a murder spree. Because now she's ill, and that's what ill people do. They turn evil and kill everyone. Apparently, Jade and Damon have the real code to exit the ward, and they gave Amy a fake code at the start of the night. Again, if they have the code, why are they not just leaving? And how did they get the code? None of this makes sense. There's more of this, you can totally judge a person's mental health by their appearance nonsense. Now that I know who Damon really is, I notice the crazed glint in his brown eyes. Even his hair has taken on a wild edge, sticking up every which way instead of neatly combed like it was at the beginning of the shift. When I first found out about the man locked in the seclusion room, it sounded like they were describing a wild animal. And when I look at Damon Sawyer, that's what I see. A man who would smash a paperweight into a woman's skull and kill her just because she was being annoying. And then there's an extra reveal. Damon grins. Maybe you should have dropped a few more hallucinogens in her peach iced tea. I feel like Damon just slugged me. For a moment, my entire world is crashing down around me. What? So all my jokes about peach-induced hallucinations weren't actually wrong. I was pretty spot on with that. My question is, though, where does a 16-year-old girl get hallucinogens, know the right dose to give, and know that they would work, and be able to slip it into her previously sealed drink without her noticing? Feels like another plot hole. But once again, all of this just reinforces this idea that mentally ill people are evil, and non-mentally ill people are good. And it's so damn harmful. Their whole plan, that this whole night has been about, is so damn convoluted and ridiculous. And none of it makes sense. Anyway, Damon looks down at his watch. We better get going with this, the sun will be up soon. At this point, it's like 6 a.m. Depending on the time of year, I'm pretty sure the sun is already going to be up, but never mind. Jade ignores my question. Actually, no, it's later than 6 a.m. It's close to 7. Not the point. Jade ignores my question. You're right, Damon. Should I go grab the paint thinner? Paint thinner? Damon tosses the paperweight splattered in Nicole's blood between his hands. Honestly, anyone who's dumb enough to leave a can of paint thinner on a psych ward is just asking to have this whole place burned down. I'm sorry, but where did this even come from? There's no explanation of who left it or why or where it's come from, because apparently you're not even meant to have it on the ward in the first place. It's just, none of this makes sense. I remember looking through Damon's chart, the history of arson when he was a child. He had an affinity for setting fires. 2 casualties. No, I breathe. You're not going to do that. He winks at me. Weren't you the one who said this place was a fire hazard? You can't do this, I croak. You can't kill all these people because you're mad at me. That's not right. Oh, get over yourself, Jade sneers at me. This isn't about you. Damon and I wanted a fresh start, so what better way to get it than to burn down the psych unit and pretend both of us went up in flames? She smirks. Although when I saw your name on the call list for this week, I did get excited about the idea of having a little fun with you in the process. We were going to do it last night, but we decided to move our plans just for you. It's true, Damon confirms. Jade made me wait a whole extra night. She must really hate you. It's such a stupid plan. So their plan is they're going to sedate Amy, set the fire, and then escape. But Amy is saved by Dan, the man who believes he's Spider-Man, because out of nowhere, Damon's face morphs into a flash of white lines. He screams and claws at his cheek. Go Webb, a voice yells out. I stare at the scene unfolding in front of me. It takes me a moment to figure out what just happened, and when I do, I can't quite believe it. It's Spider-Dan. He came out of freaking nowhere and dropped a web constructed of dental floss onto Damon's face, and now he's tightening the web, cutting off Damon's airway. Why would they allow dental floss in a psych ward? Doesn't make sense. Spider-Dan is stronger than he looks. Also, you can make a spider web out of dental floss, apparently. I can't believe it. Cameron was right. Yeah, this is a believable ending to all of this, isn't it? Jade and Amy then fight each other until Amy finally remembers she has the plastic knitting needle that Mary gave her in her pocket, and then she stabs Jade. Just as this all happens, a man appears outside the door of Ward D, and before I can figure out exactly how to respond, I hear pounding at the door to Ward D. A man's voice rings out. Everything okay in there? We heard shouting. I almost laugh at how completely not okay it is in here. We're locked in, I shout at the door. Please help us. Here's my confusion in this plan, right? They want to just set a fire on the ward, pretend they died, and escape. Why wait until nearly 7 a.m. to do that? There was literally no reason to wait out the entire night, just sitting around doing nothing, waiting until they knew the day shift would be coming into work, where everyone would be in the hospital and it would be busy, there'd be a ton of witnesses around for their escape. This is stupid as hell. And also, did they not think, about their bodies not being there? None of this makes sense. This is so damn stupid. Oh, none of this makes sense. I'm so annoyed. So the outside man comes in, and he immediately trusts Amy because he recognizes her as, I know you, he says. You're the medical student who kept forgetting the combination to your locker in the anatomy lab. So tee-hee, being a dumb little girl has saved the day again. Me. The police are called. We find out that Miguel is dead too. Will is struggling to breathe, so they rush him off to the ICU, apparently, because he's still sedated. Amy gets questioned by the police. Jade and Damon are now sent to prison. I don't get why this is the event that gets them sent to prison instead of these low-security psych wards that they've been repeatedly sent to in the past. There is no logic to any of this. Amy leaves the hospital, and Gabby is there waiting for her. I scan the entranceway until I spot the grey Toyota all the way on the side, the one that brought me here 12 hours ago, although it feels like 12 years. And again, another plot hole, 12 hours ago. So even though the shift is supposed to be 13 hours long, and Gabby was going to pick her up at the end of the shift, either Amy got to her shift an hour late, which we already know she didn't because Cam was there at the same time, or she got out of her shift an hour early, but Gabby just showed up an hour early to pick her up with no communication, or maybe she did a 12-hour shift, or no, because then she would have had time to be questioned by the police as well. So this 12-hour thing makes no sense. This doesn't make any sense. The timeline makes no sense. This book is stupid. That's the end of the book until we get an epilogue. It's a year later. Here we find out that now Amy is dating Will, who has got her addicted to something called an iced dirty chai tea latte. I love a chai latte, to be honest. The trick, right? Get a chai latte with oat milk. Makes the flavour so much richer. It's so damn good. It's fantastic. A little bit of cinnamon on top. Love it. Apparently this is an important thing, but I don't really care. Will is now writing a book about the whole Ward D situation, and Damon and Jade were apparently both arrested, although ultimately they were sent to a psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane. Their insanity defense kept them from life in prison, but I've read that some of those psychiatric hospitals are much worse than prisons. After all, they will be surrounded by people just like themselves. The stigma never stops, does it? Right to the last chapter. In the words of Amy, oh my god. Then we get our final reveal. As Amy is busy gushing about how perfect Will is and how perfect her life is, he notices me watching him and flashes me an adorable smile before going back to his screen. Will is just so great. He makes me want to fill a spiral notebook with bad poetry about his smouldering hazel eyes. I could really see this working out. Marriage, 2.4 kids, a golden retriever and a house with a white picket fence. He's too good for you, you know? I jolt slightly at the voice. I drop my eyes and my heart sinks. A pretty little girl standing in front of me as if waiting for an iced, dirty chai tea latte of her own. Her blonde hair curls around her heart-shaped face, and she's wearing an immaculate and frilly pink dress. Her familiar blue eyes bore into me an unreadable expression on her face. I hate this little girl so much. I avert my gaze, trying to ignore her like I always do, but she's not to be ignored. He's probably going to dump you soon, she says. She'll never entirely leave me, though. I saw her the most when I was drinking those peached iced tea lattes with hallucinogens, but even after Jade left my life, I still saw the little girl from time to time. It's been 9 years, and I have never told a soul aside from Jade. I don't know if the drugs she slipped me triggered something inside me that couldn't be turned off, but that little girl is always with me. Always. And she always tells me to do bad things, but I don't listen. Of course I don't. Well, most of the time. So earlier when she said she never saw the little girl again, she never hallucinated again, that was a complete flat-out lie to the audience for no reason other than to be deceiving for the sake of having a twist at the end of this book. That is just poor writing. Then there's a bunch of confessions from Amy about how she did a bunch of awful stuff because she was hallucinating. And the awful stuff she did was primarily to women. There was one black thing to Cameron, but it was primarily to other women. And this is where we realise that Amy is just a flat-out terrible person. I did listen at that party when Cameron and I hooked up. I dropped some laxatives from the medicine cabinet into his girlfriend Jess's drink because I had my eye on Cameron for a while, and the little girl knew how badly I wanted to get him alone. I listened to her when she told me to send a damning letter to the director of that research fellowship Cam applied to because she knew I didn't want him disappearing across the country for an entire year. I also listened to her when she told me to go back and check Seclusion 1 instead of making my escape from Ward D, and when she whispered in my ear to stab Jade with Mary's knitting needle. I would never have thought to do that on my own. And then the book ends with, but I don't listen to her blindly. It's not like I would do absolutely anything she tells me to do. I mean, I would never kill anyone just because this little girl told me to, even though it feels like more and more that's what she's been telling me to do, but I wouldn't do it. After all, I would have to be crazy to do something like that, and this book is so damn harmful. Again, being a doctor, hallucinating, and not getting treatment is just so dangerous for all of your patients. It's so bad. I just feel like every time I've read a Frieda McFadden book, it's been worse than the last. And I didn't think this one would be quite as bad as it is, and as ableist as it is. Because I'm just utterly shocked. I'm also shocked by her acknowledgements for this book, which read, "Thanks to my mother for reading it twice, and effusively telling me, OMG, this is the best book ever," all capital letters. Thank you to my father for giving me feedback as a practicing psychiatrist, none of which involved women's shoes this time. So, I'm sorry, you're telling me that your psychiatrist dad was involved in writing this book, and he was okay with you publishing this? What the hell? And are his patients okay? This is horrifying. I thought we'd end this video by looking at some reviews from other people who sum up my thoughts far more eloquently than I ever could. This book stigmatizes mental illness. The story is unbelievable and annoying. I wanted to scream at the main character, but more than that, I want to scream at the author for perpetuating such negative stereotypes about those who suffer from mental illness. Very disappointing. First of all, I find it hard to believe that this was written by a practicing physician at all. 2023 is fast becoming the year of mental health awareness, and for you to put out a work depicting mental health as crass as this on May, the Mental Health Awareness Month, mind you, is nothing less than distasteful and unsympathetic. But I just have to ask, who would let a medical student in a psychiatric ward without proper briefing and preparation? Exactly. What kind of teaching hospital is this? And given that she's an A+ student, how come she did not do her research prior to doing her rounds? What kind of medical student would be so disinterested in reading medical charts when you came in there to learn? Did she purposely choose to be so dumb so the story would go on? She can't be bothered to read the patient's charts, but she has time to recount and fantasize about cams, lips, and caresses. Priorities. Another says, I'm a Frieda McFadden fan, but this book is utter garbage. The writing is at a 3rd grade level with limited vocabulary. She calls everyone and everything crazy. For a book that handles the topic of mental illness, the topic is handled very clumsily. She claims to be a physician, but physicians do not refer to patients as crazy. Highly unprofessional. She claims to have several mental health care professionals read the book. That's questionable. No medical student would behave this way. You have to suspend all reality to enjoy the book. Fiction is one thing, but this book is complete fantasy with poor writing style. This book is not worth the paper it's printed on. And fun fact, there are 44 instances of the words crazy or craziest or some variation in this book. 44. Another review reads, McFadden, shame on you. Appears you have never worked on a night shift at a psych hospital. The staff ratio was way unrealistic, too short-staffed. With backup, Amy would not have ended up on the floor. No one checking on or knowing where the patients were all night. Anyone who's ever worked with the mentally ill wouldn't even consider working on Ward D. Locked ward, no backup, only one nurse, one doctor. Doctors don't involve themselves in acting out patients and they don't work graveyard shifts. Please, this story was weak and totally unrealistic. Grossly incorrect. Knitting needles on a locked ward, recipe for suicide, and maybe staff injury by trying to secure the object. Staff sleeping on the ward, one way for a patient to stab themselves with a knitting needle. No searchers. Second point, the mentally ill are not bloodthirsty killers. Thank you. The patients are by far more likely to hurt themselves. Very, very bad portrayal of the mentally ill. Shame on you. 30 years experience speaking. In 30 years while working, I only had one injury and that was my fault. Love this person for saying this. This was so hard to read. Anyone who works in the mental health or psychiatry fields will literally cringe throughout this entire book due to horrible inaccuracies and the absolutely atrocious and inaccurate portrayal of inpatient mental health unit. I'm actually tempted to write the author on this one because of how her writing has perpetuated the narrative that people with mental illnesses are inherently violent. This is simply not true. Another person says, as a nurse who works in a hospital psych ward, this was so effing stupid. The lack of staff, patients. Patients being able to easily access staff lounges, break room, no cameras, leaving patients in seclusion and restraints with no monitoring, patients having knitting needles, no panic button everywhere. I just couldn't help but compare everything to my unit while I was reading. And finally, I feel like Victorian-era Bedlam was run better than Ward D. An insult to the mental health care industry, and if in any way indicative of the current healthcare system, Americans are in a lot more trouble than previously thought. This is not how emergency/trauma psych wards are run. And if the author had bothered with even the barest modicum of actual in-person research, they would have seen that. Zero security on the ward, same-sex wards, only one night nurse, no cameras, no backup generators. Oh god, it's all so incredulous and nonsensical, it actually makes me boiling mad. Completely and utterly unrealistic. I couldn't even be bothered to suspend my disbelief at this ramble free of a book. Okay, and that is me done. I'm actually really glad I managed to record this and get through it all. It's been some much needed levity in what has been an absolutely awful week. But please let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments. Thank you so much for your patience and your support. And yeah, I'm going to go. QB is due her next medication now, so I'm going to go give her some snuggles and just spend the rest of the day with her. So thank you all for your patience and kindness. I really hope you at least still manage to enjoy this video and get something out of it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, let me know if there's any other video topics you would like me to cover. And yeah, I'll see you guys again soon. Thank you so much for watching.